All right, folks, we're going to get started, please. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law, I wish to state that on January 24th, the notice of this meeting of the Upper Township Committee was posted on the official Township Bulletin Board, mailed to the Decatur County Gazette, the Atlantic City Press, the Ocean City Sentinel Ledger, the Herald Times, and filed with the Township Clerk. Tonight's meeting is being video recorded and will be available on UTTV Channel 2 and on the Upper Township website. I hereby direct this announcement made a part of the minutes of this meeting. I would ask all rise for the salute to the flag, and I would ask Alex, Andrew, and Jack, please come up and lead us, if you would, to the Pledge of Allegiance. Face the flag. Salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Barbara, would you call the roll? You guys can stay there because we're going to do your presentation for most of you. Know you got homework and school and everything else.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Mr. Coggins?
Here.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes. Here.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
All members are present.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion for the minutes of the open meeting from December 16th, the closed session meeting minutes from January 3rd, and the reorganization meeting? So,
Make a motion to accept the minutes?
is there any corrections, deletion, omission that anyone's aware of? Hearing none, would you call the roll?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, we'll do the report from the governing bodies after you do the presentations, but since we have Alex and Andrew and Jack up here, we'll do one at a time. If you guys wouldn't mind, whoever, we'll call up Alex Schroeder first from Troop 79, and with parents can come up and okay, so I'd like to read the resolution for Alex, and it says, whereas Alex Schroeder has recently achieved the designation of Eagle Scout and Boy Scouts of America, Township of Upper wishes to acknowledge this outstanding accomplishment. That the Township extends its sincere congratulations to Alex on the occasion of his receiving the designation of the Eagle Scout and commends him for this outstanding accomplishment and the completion of his Eagle Scout project consisting of constructing a discus and shot put throwing facility comprised of a concrete pad and fenced-in cage for the Upper Township Middle School track and field program. That the Township Committee extends its congratulations and best wishes to Alex's parents, family, and friends on this happy occasion. And that the Township Committee also extends its congratulations and appreciation to the Scoutmasters of Troop 79 and all others who gave so freely and generously of their time for the benefit of our youth. So, let's congratulate Alex on the job well done. There's only 2% of all scouts that ever attained Eagle Scout, and we have 3 this evening from the township, and that is quite an accomplishment, and we have many throughout the year. So, our troops are very active, the boys are very active, and many of the projects that we have in the township are directly tied to Eagle Scout projects. So they're all to be congratulated, and we'll do each one individually. So Alex, congratulations to you and to your mom. We'll give you a little. Congratulations. Of course, we want to get a picture of you for the certificate. Let's see if we can get. Shake your hand as well. I don't know if we can all get in here. Yeah, you're fine. Let's see if we can get everybody in here. All right. Congratulations. And Andrew Brunel, let's do Andrew next, please. You would come up. Whereas Andrew Brunel has recently achieved the designation of Eagle Scout, The township of Upper wishes to acknowledge this outstanding accomplishment. That the township extends its sincere congratulations to Andrew on the occasion of his receiving the designation of Eagle Scout and commends him for his outstanding accomplishment in the completion of his Eagle Scout project consisting of constructing a dog agility course comprised of a resting table, a frame, a hoop, a balance beam at the Upper Township Dog Park in Tuckahoe. That the Township Committee extends its congratulations and best wishes to Andrew's parents, family, and friends on this happy occasion, and that the Township Committee also extends its congratulations and appreciation to the Scoutmasters of Troop 79 and all of those who have worked freely and generously of their time for our youth and helping Andrew with this project. So, congratulations again to you, Andrew. Very good. Scoutmaster. Round of applause, everyone. Come on. And again, you can see that each one of these projects are done for the benefit of the township, and it's amazing some of the things that these young men have accomplished. So now, Jack, it's your turn. Whereas Jack Payne has recently achieved the designation of Eagle Scout from the Boy Scouts of America, Township of Upper wishes to acknowledge this outstanding accomplishment. The Township extends its sincere congratulations to Jack on the occasion of his receiving the designation of Eagle Scout and commends him for this outstanding accomplishment and the completion of his Eagle Scout project consisting of landscaping the flagpole walkway at the Upper Township Primary School with new pavers and shrubs. The Township Committee extends its congratulations and best wishes to Jack's parents, family, and friends on this happy occasion, and that the Township Committee again offers its sincere congratulations and appreciation to the Scoutmasters of Troop 79 and all others who are given so freely and generously of their time for the benefit of our youth and those that have helped Jack. So, again, congratulations to you, Jack, to your parents. And thank you. And I guess if you guys would mind, just so for the benefit of the audience, most of the materials and things that you use are donated by local business folks. So it's really a good opportunity and partnership between our businesses and the Eagle Scouts. And again, their projects all benefit this township. A lot of the things that you see in the parks, in a lot of the other areas, and the schools and everything are done by the Eagle Scout project. So I know there's a number that have asked Paul at times, what we can suggest from the township. So we look forward to seeing you. Eagle Scouts are noted for eventually going into public service and office. So I hope that you guys one day become president, one of you anyway. So. We get all three of them? Yes, that'd be fine. Come on up, that'd be ready.
Yes.
If I may add, it takes like 1,100 steps once you get into volume scaling. Okay, at age 11 through age 18, there are 1,100 individual steps. Somebody added that on every bit in the book, and it takes 7-8 years to do this, accomplish this. It's a heck of an achievement. It is a great achievement. Hold on, I messed up here. No, I can't see anymore. My eyes are closed. Thank you. Okay. Thanks again, guys. You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go home if you have things to do. Everyone has homework to do. So, Barbara, you have anything for us this evening?
I have nothing to report this evening, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Daniel?
Nothing at this time, but we do have a handful of matters for closed session, a personnel, a litigation, and a contract negotiation.
Okay. Paul, do you have anything for us this evening?
Just a few things. First, I have, just wanted to highlight the report in the reports at the end of the meeting, is the summary of the activities for the Green Team, for a new team that we established, I guess, back in September of 13. You know, we do have a very active group of volunteers, which I'm very happy about, that they're, trying to do a lot of sustainable things for the township. And based on that, when we initially set up the membership for the committee, we only had 4 members of the public request to join the team based on our search. We've had several members that have come and are active participants in our meeting, and the rest of the members have asked that those 3 individuals kind of be included as full members of the Green Team, just to show their, acknowledge their attendance and hard work. And I did provide the citizen leadership forms to everybody this evening, and would ask that possibly at a future meeting that we could add them as members, and that would bring our membership up to 9 members on the team.
Okay. So, you provided us with the names, and I would ask the Township Committee to review these, and if you would, Barbara, I would suggest we put this on the agenda for the next meeting, and we can discuss finalizing. Okay?
No problem.
And then the other thing I also would like to report, I don't know if anybody noticed that the floors look very shiny today, that the school did come over on Friday and Saturday and did the floors, and you can really tell a difference when they were done, and I think they did a really good job. So I just wanted to let the committee know that the school is continuing to kind of continue that partnership. We kind of know all the stuff that we do for them, but that is one service that they have come over and helped us out, so we don't have to outsource that work. Thank you. That's all.
In fact, Mr. and Sarah and I had a meeting over the weekend. When I came in, I actually noticed how it was very apparent. So they did a good job.
You could actually see the Elisa on the fire.
I was like trying not to slip on the ice, and I wasn't sure if I was going to slip. No, just kidding. It looks great. They did a good job.
That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Barbara, do you have anything for us this evening?
I have a couple things. First of all, I've spoken to a couple of the committee members, but we have possibly an emergent situation with our community center as far as our heating units and air conditioning units. I spoke to our auditor today, and because of the condition of the 3 units there, we can declare an emergency, and declaring an emergency would allow us to forgo the public bidding process that can be time-consuming. We are working on getting quotes. I have working on at least 3, if not 4 contractors, getting prices from them. We do have one to repair, a quote to repair it, also to replace a couple of the units. So I just wanted to make you aware, all of you aware of it, and that we do have a possible emergent situation there.
So Dan, just so that we follow this, it would be a vote, a resolution declaring that this is an emergency situation.
Proceed, directing the purchasing officer to proceed on an emergent basis to repair or replace the heaters as necessary. Barbara and I did speak briefly. It is one of the exceptions to public bidding. The only reason we would do as an exception is the timing. It's the community centers at its peak probably use this time of year. All the sports teams, everybody wants to get in there. And if you had to wait for public bidding and shut it down, its peak period wouldn't be used for a month or so. My understanding is she feels confident that the values that we're going to get, because it can be done with quotes and it's a rather standard type thing, that we're not going to really lose any money on it. It's really a procedural thing, and she's cleared it with me and the auditor. It can be done. So if you want to direct her to do that, I think, and keep this community center open, frankly, that's what you need to do.
Would someone like to make that a motion?
I'll make a motion that we proceed with emergency. Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Let's call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you. The other item I had, I quickly put a flyer up at your places. We've had a request from our recycling coordinator here that he's made contact with this gentleman, Steve Trash, who puts on quite a show for school kids to educate them about recycling, how important it is, and he is requesting, Mr. McDaniels is requesting that we use some of our recycling funds, $1,250 of those funds, to put on 2 shows for the kids at the middle school and the elementary school. One show at the middle, one at the elementary. On April 24th to coincide with our Earth Week celebration. They have also talked about, incidentally, the school's on board with it, the school's very excited about it. Mr. Trash and the school have even suggested maybe doing kind of a PR presentation where it would be videotaped and then shown on Channel 2 or the new Channel 97. The thing that I need from you, if you folks are in agreement to it, I need your consent to pay the $1,250 out of our recycling trust fund for this show for the kids, and then potentially it goes on our informational channel, and residents and parents can see it as well.
Any motion?
Well, if I could, just real quick. I've been working on this with Billy. This guy is a magician as well as a comedian. He does a 45-minute show, and he's willing to do a segment in between the shows as a public service announcement, which is going to lead right into our new trash system going to the place. It's a good gesture on his part, and he's never heard of Dr. Steve Trash, but and look at what he does, it's pretty phenomenal. So I think it's a great idea.
So is that a motion?
That's a motion to approve. Second.
Okay. So there's a first and second, any other discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Coggins?
Well, I think tonight we got off to a fairly good start with the budget review meeting. As we opened up with the meeting, we obviously have to start looking hard and deep at all of our line items and look to really dig in there to save some money, because without finding this additional money in the budget, we could be facing a potential tax increase. And we obviously need to do our best to prevent that from happening.
Yep, it's a good start. And just for the record, we will be having another workshop next Monday, and that'll be from 6:30 to 9:30 at night, and we'll continue to go through the budget opportunities, and people can, we may chime in if they'd like to, and that will be February 3rd. All right, anything else? Okay. Mr. Young?
With recreation, I met with Paul, we went over the master plan for Andrews Field and the budget on the county grant, and trying to find the best way to expedite the baseball fields that have been up and running for the spring. One of our main things we have to do is get a bathroom and another refreshment stand built there, and we're looking at locations for that now. The field's on its way, and I've asked Tony and everybody to come up with a fire and this as far as equipment, materials that we're going to need here, so we know what we have to earmark and where. I've also been talking to Dan about doing a generic set of bylaws along with the Recreation Advisory Board that will govern all sports in the township as a overall bylaw. They'll be able to have their bylaws under for their own programs, but I think it's really important that we address the use of the fields being cleaned, the community center being cleaned, as well as the way programs are going to be run. I've had some talk with some of the programs, and I like what I see, I like the direction, and I think everybody's getting excited for us to get this thing kicked into gear. And hopefully put on a lot more programs at Amanda's Field in the future that would incorporate all the people in the township, concerts and different things. So we're looking at a long range. Anybody that has ideas for a managed field, feel free to let us know. It's a community field, and we definitely want to put it to work as a community field, so that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Insaro?
Well, we have, in addition to the Township drive, we have other items that we talk about a little bit. This is the bond. So mine's including the bond, some of them already are, some of them will like include the bond. And there is, we need to have a list, John, you have a list of we have a list there?
Yeah, I've got a list in the,
No, I'm going to work on this and,
It's an agenda item, isn't it? Tony, is that the same as the agenda item 16 in the discussion? Is that what we're talking about? What was in the package?
It's under discussion.
Is that the same item? We just need to, I guess, pull it out if that's what you're referring to.
well, this will probably be under the bond conditions.
yeah, I think that's a line item.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out that it is on the agenda. We can take it out of order if that's what you want to do, and the committee wants to.
If anyone wants to get to it,
Okay.
well, other than that, I'm discussing these things, I'm not going
Mr. Milano?
Well, we had our rabies clinic this past Saturday, was a success again. Sold 51 dog licenses and vaccinated 73 dogs and 17 cats. So we're doing, yeah, doing dogs, and they will all behave.
That was shocking.
But anyway, it looks like we're doing pretty good as far as our township's concerned in rabies control. So anybody out there who is looking, first of all, to have your dog licensed, and second, to have your pet vaccinated for rabies, we have another clinic coming up, and that will be in February. And that will be posted on Channel 2. 97, there you go. Also, there's going to be a meeting tomorrow, county freeholders. There's going to be a presentation on central dispatch for the county that I'm going to attend, and I'll be glad to report on that at next committee meeting. And finally, Saturday night, we had the opportunity to be at our rescue squad's installation dinner that was hosted by Chief Potter. And it was a very nice night, and I'll tell you, they have a hell of a group of people that are volunteers and also paid people that are in our volunteer rescue squad. They gave out a series of awards, and what was the award that I got?
Most all calls,
Most all calls, how many?
179.
179 all calls that this guy had, going out volunteering and showing up on calls. So, I mean, it shows the exceptionalism in our township when it comes to volunteers. I mean, I met with the chiefs, the fire chiefs, and Chief Potter. You talk about as far as the volunteers that are in these organizations, I mean, they're pretty deep. I mean, you're talking about their sons, their daughters are getting involved, so we got a nice pool of volunteers that just keep coming up and feeding the programs. I mean, all the way through all of our volunteers. I mean, we have the fire, OEM, volunteers at OEM, you have planning and zoning, you have the rec boards. The rec board sits up here every month, has to deal with a lot of the recreational issues. That's all volunteer time. Then you have the coaches. We have Green Team that Tony's working on right now. And also our school board that a lot of people takes for granted. So a lot of these volunteers, John, I know you're the finance guy, but they save us a ton of money. So it's something that we shouldn't just take for granted. And going to one of those dinners, as Chief Potter had going on, it opens up your eyes as far as what these people do every day. So I commend you, Chief Potter, on your crew. You run a tight ship, and that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. I did confirm that on February 10th, Monday, at 11 a.m., the senior center will be officially dedicated. Freeholders have confirmed that date, so certainly we welcome anyone to come on February 10th, 11 a.m. to that meeting, to the dedication at the senior center. There's been a lot of work that's in there. In fact, it looks like a brand-new building, inside and out. And so we're all looking forward to the opportunity to have our seniors go back into what they consider a part-time home and enjoy some of the activities that will be offered to them. I also want to talk just briefly and acknowledge Chief Jay Newman and the Marmora Fire Company. For those of you that don't know, we actually had a train derailment on Saturday. The front engine of the train that brings the coal to Beale Island derailed off of Glory Road. And the reason why I'm acknowledging this is for a couple reasons. One, if it wasn't for the work of the Marmora Fire Company and working with the state troopers to get a hold of the rock up in Trenton, we would not have been able to move that train. They were able to move the train off of Old Tuckahoe Road so that it wouldn't block the access. So that was something that we weren't sure that was going to be accomplished right away because we weren't sure if the Transportation Authority had to come in and make that decision. So it really could have complicated it. They were able to move the cars off the road and bring the other two engines back. And I guess maybe off the cuff I would say that, again, this is another reason why I'm dismayed that the Pinelands Commission didn't vote to allow the South Jersey gas line to go in, because now we had the train derailment that didn't cause any harm, but it could have been an issue in the township. And if they changed the Beale Inland over to gas, we wouldn't have trains bringing coal to the line. So, add that to the list of things that we've tried to discuss to have Beale Inland converted over to natural gas. So there are two things that I wanted to acknowledge tonight. So let's go on with the resolutions, please.
Okay. Under presentations, item number 4, we have the National Flood Insurance Program Community Rating System.
Back in late December, right before the holidays, FEMA came down to present a plaque to all the communities that increased their community rating systems over that last year. Kennedy County had one of the larger numbers of communities. Upper Township was fortunate. We were the only non-barrier island community that increased their flood rating system from a 7 down to a 6. And FEMA came down to present the plaque to all the different communities. And with the increase in rating system, we're saving residents over $160,000 in flood insurance premiums by the different activities that the township does. So it's a pretty significant savings. It was an additional about $80,000 in savings that the residents were going to see over this next coming year. So this will be just an additional plaque to hang up and just acknowledging our new classification in the CRS program.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Move along with the resolutions. Item number 5, authorizing the execution of a contract with Vital Communications of Trenton, New Jersey for revaluation of all real property for the 2015 tax year.
Move the resolution.
Second?
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins? Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 6, the 2014 mining license renewals.
Okay. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, Dan, is there anything you'd like to add?
They're not at the site plan year where they have to get their site plan submitted and reviewed. It's a licensing year. However, the first license renewal does have an amendment that was approved, and you have that resolution from the planning board in your file. Other than that, I'll defer to Paul on any technical specifications, but in reviewing it, didn't see anything out of the ordinary.
All the applications are in order, and they're all up to date on their inspections, and they're in compliance with all the township rules and regulations. On the occasion that we do have a resident neighbor complaint, all the operators are very quick to respond to any issue that may come up, and so I think they're all in compliance with the rules.
And perhaps for the benefit of the new township committee folks, the license is renewed every year about this time. However, every 5 years, I believe, Paul, they have to submit a site plan for review and approval of the Township Planning Board, which encompasses their entire operations, and that they have, it's like their plan for the next 5 years, okay? And that is a more thorough review when it's that year.
And plus, in addition, on the, I'll say the third year, they also submit an as-built survey to make sure that they're still in compliance with within their mining, within their limits. So it's kind of the intermediate check that I do to have an as-built survey done also.
Quick question for my benefit. When I was reading through some of the paperwork over the weekend, I noticed that each one of the licenses, when they reissued or when the state approved, they all said conditionally approved. Is that just typical nomenclature in there?
On our resolution?
Not on our resolution, this was on the forms from the state.
Okay.
They were included in our packet.
My understanding is that the standard language that's on there, Paul, do you know what John's referring to? So, are you talking about the state?
They talk about the soil conservation.
The Soil Conservation District approval? Because that's not a state, that's a county. We issue the license. My package only included these Cape Atlantic Conservation
That's all you
District.
should have, is the application and the Cape Atlantic Soil Conservation Report.
It was under the letters.
Is it in the mining apps? Maybe. Here, it's from the, it's, this one, this is what you're looking for? That's from the county.
From the county, if you're looking through the letters, from the Cape Atlantic Conservation, I don't know, it says the site is generally in compliance, it doesn't say conditional.
Right, it's for their purposes, they're saying they have no objection to the issuance of the license, but Paul does a review every 3 years, and then the site plan every 5 years, and reviews the application, the license application, to make sure it complies. So we do a more thorough review than Cape Atlantic would do.
Okay.
Because what they're doing is, they're just going out to look for soil erosion control measures. They're not looking to make sure they're still within a buffer, or they're mining too deep, or some of the other requirements that we would look under for our ordinance requirements.
All right, so based on their scope of
Their parameters of what they can look at.
And that certification, or loosely termed, is what we require in order to, one of the items to reissue the license.
Yeah.
The big reissuance is really Paul's review of the application, make sure it complies.
So would someone like to make a motion to approve the mining applications based on, both the engineer and the testimony by our attorney?
Motion approved?
Second. Okay, would you call roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 7, reserve budget transfers.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Call roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 8, authorizing a professional services contract with Cape May County Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse for an employment assistance program for township employees.
Move the resolution. Second?
Okay, this is memorialized what we discussed at the last meeting. So would you call roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 9, authorizing the purchasing agent to prepare specifications and solicit bids for refuse collection equipment.
Move the resolution.
Second.
And again, this is the discussion that we had last week, or last meeting, and additional rear-end loading trash trucks. So would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 10, appointment of McManaman, Scotland, and Ballman to act as special bond counsel to the Township of Upper with regards to capital improvement projects.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Sarah. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 11, under new business, Ralph Clayton requests to vacate a portion of the paper street known as Adams Avenue between 2nd Street and Mill Road in Tuckahoe.
Paul, have the neighbors been advised of this?
I don't believe so. Typically, we don't go to that next step until you move it forward and say, go ahead and notify that we're going to start the process.
Well, we don't usually put the ordinance on until we know that the other adjacent owners are in agreement.
Right, this is just the request.
Right. So we will investigate. If you say to go forward, they're going to, the clerk's office and Paul's office will see whether or not the other adjacent owners have any objection. If they do, we may bring it back to you before we do the ordinance.
And now, is he asking us to vacate the land?
No, there's a road, Adams Avenue, and he's asking that a section of that from 2nd Street to Mill Road, which is not paved, it's all wooded, be vacated as though we no longer need it for public use, that road will never be improved. And what happens, half of that land would go to the one adjoining owner on the front step paper street, and the other half would go to the other. And there's a couple of questions I defer to Paul. We want to look at it for are we ever going to need it for future use, for circulation? Is there any need for it in that area based upon any anticipated development that could come in the future? We have a lot of areas in the township with paper streets that were laid out 50, 75, 80 years ago that really don't make any sense based upon our lot size now. Because the lots, if you look at the lot sizes here, there's no dimensions on them, but they're 25.
110 or 100.
Yeah, they're much smaller than our required lot sizes, and we probably wouldn't pave all those streets. We might do every other one because of the lot size requirements. And that's the reason in the past that the township has vacated some streets. You're never going to use it. It'll never be paved. But, go ahead.
And in this area, in the Pinelands, the RD zone, you're required to have 3.2 acres anyway, so it's not even a normal 1 acre zoning, it's a 3 acre plus zone.
Okay, so right now, we're just approving, go ahead and we're going to...
To identify, to actually look at, I'm assuming Paul did the review. Is there any reason for the township committee's purposes that they would need this road for the future, for circulation or anything?
And there is only, besides the township, only one other adjacent property owner, and that's the other property owner on the other side of the street.
So it should be split between one and the other.
Correct. And it does not landlock or, everybody still would have access on another street.
And
Motion to proceed?
motion to proceed, put it on agenda, before we do that, contact the other property owner, make sure they don't have any objections, and also, obviously, get confirmation that the cost of the street vacation will be paid for by the applicant.
Motion to proceed.
Second.
Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 12, Ralph Clayton requests to purchase township-owned property, Block 417, lots 4 through 10, and Block 424, lots 51 through 60.
And what is this?
It's kind of part of the same thing. It's really, I think the committee should probably look at these as two matters. The first one would be the lots in Block 417. Those are required to be able to meet the minimum lot size requirement. Currently, there's not enough, even though there's an existing foundation, they could get a building permit to replace the house, but because they don't have the 3.2 acres, they'd probably have to get their alternative septic system at an increased additional cost. having the 3 acres of ground makes them a conforming lot within our zoning and does not require that additional septic system. Because in block 417, they are the only contiguous owners. It's a different type of transaction where, it's essentially an auction, at the lowest, based on the lowest appraised value, because they're the only contiguous property owner.
A question for you, Paul.
Yes.
It's 2 separate requests, but both of them front on Adams Avenue, correct?
No, the request in block...
Or the other one does not front. So that one could move forward without the street vacation.
That's why I said, the committee should really look at, there's kind of 2 requests in there.
Does the applicant still want to purchase the land even if the street vacation doesn't go through?
I think he still wants 417.
We need to determine that because we don't want to be wasting our time if for some reason the street vacation doesn't go through. And then secondly, the other, it would be block 424, I believe.
Right, that's where
That would have to wait until that prior request for a street vacation because you need the street vacated first to get the actual...
For him to...
Right, to be an adjacent property owner, to bid on it.
Correct.
But there could be other bidders because there's other owners.
Correct.
And well, here, and this is something I also have a question on. There are 2 Claytons here. One is Clayton Equipment Corp. and the other one's Dolores Clayton. Are they going to merge that ownership so they're considered one owner? Is that where that's going to end up?
Yes, they
Because legally now, it looks like as though there are 2 owners.
Currently, there are 2 distinct owners.
So the purchase would require them to consolidate.
Prior to...
We may want to do that before we, because otherwise we're creating, you can't consolidate unless they both agree, and this is written by Ralph Clayton. He does say he's Clayton, it says formerly Clayton Equipment Corp., but I have questions as to who is Ralph in relation to those 2 entities. Because he's not either of them. So we'd have to answer those questions.
Correct.
Well, the other thing is, that once the land is combined, will they be able to subdivide it?
No, that's, one, they wouldn't be able to subdivide because they won't have the minimum, they won't have additional lot acreage because you're in a 3.2 acre zone. You won't have additional lot acreage there to subdivide. But it's our standard condition, once we sell land, that no further subdivision of the land can happen and all the lots have to be consolidated.
And also, they have to try to purchase adjacent land in lieu of the variance before it goes before the zoning board.
The township has never sold land to create additional lots. It's only been to take your existing lot and make it larger. In my tenure, I mean, in the past, they may have sold land for development of residential properties, but in the last 10 years, there's always been that condition that if you want to purchase our extra lots that are adjacent, you have to make it part of your homestead lot. You don't get to create new lots.
How is the price set for land, which one's the price?
We would get a minimum bid set by an appraisal, which they would have to pay for, they have to put up an escrow amount, and then if there are 2 adjacent property owners, they would bid at an auction, and that minimum bid would be the starting bid.
Would the adjacent property owners be the only people who would be permitted to...
Yes, because you have to, one of our conditions...
Oh, it's got to be contiguous, got it.
One of our conditions is that you make it part of your property, so somebody across town, we've had this happen where they've shown up at the auction because they've read it out in the paper, and the clerk's office would have to tell them, look, you can't satisfy this condition, so you really can't bid, you're not a qualified bidder.
Because then they'll have a non-buildable lot that wouldn't conform, so...
How many adjacent property owners are there, you know?
Well, it really depends upon the issue of what entities Clayton owns and how does he own them. But if you assume that all the Clayton properties are one owner, there's only one other adjacent property owner.
Correct. And really, for the property in 417, the Clayton is the only adjacent property owner. There is no other adjacent.
The Clayton entities, there's 2 of them.
Clayton entity. But in the block 424, once Adams Avenue would be vacated, then there would be possibly 2 entities, the Clayton entity and then the estate of Rita Shiloh.
So, based on what the last motion was, to proceed, does it make sense to go through that first before any other decision is made?
At least for block
424.
424, So 424 should be contingent upon what happens with the street vacation.
Inform them that they have.
Yeah, I would suggest that we bring this back to answer some of the questions I raised, even the one that could probably proceed without the street vacation. I think we have to satisfy some of those title issues and get a better understanding of that. And I assume if we get the correct understanding that it is one entity and they're all going to be consolidated, then we can move forward if the applicant wants to prior to the street vacation.
So then are you suggesting that we rescind our last vote?
No, you go forward with the street vacation no matter what, assuming that the other adjacent owner wants the street vacated. And then we would then proceed, if the title issues can be addressed on the lot that does not have a adjacent owner, which is, let me get the numbers again, proceed on 417 if the applicant wants to. If not, we do 417 and 424 at the same time. So what we really need a sense is that if those questions are answered, does the committee want us to move forward? Because the clerk's office and my office has
So
to do some
for
work.
agenda purposes, are we tabling this until we find out that other information, or should we re-agendize it as unfinished business?
It's your call. You could move forward and just direct the engineer's office, my office, and the clerk's office to get those answers, and depending upon those answers, put it on agenda for action. You can do that, or you can just table it and get the answers, and I'll report back.
That will take another couple of weeks or whatever. If you want to go expedite that, might as well, let's go ahead with pending,
Positive out,
right.
positive.
Yeah, let's move forward with that and pending that on the railroad.
So that motion?
Yes. Second.
Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Okay, item number 13, Timothy and Carol Ann McCune request to vacate a portion of Mistletoe Avenue.
Paul?
This is coming to us, the McCanns were at the zoning board last month, and they had a undersized lot that needed some setback variance relief. They actually have 3 front yards on their property, and the zoning board asked them that, some of their setback relief could be extinguished, because obviously if you got rid of one of there's 3 streets, then they don't have that front yard setback requirement, and so that's why they're here, is to vacate a portion of Mistletoe Avenue. Unfortunately, my recommendation was, we don't need the street, we could vacate Mistletoe Avenue. However, you cannot vacate the entire portion of Mistletoe Avenue, because there would be, if you look at the map from Union Avenue to Hudson Avenue, there's some properties further down closer to Hudson that would be landlocked if we vacated the whole street. So, I would recommend that you could vacate Mistletoe Avenue adjacent to lots 1, 11, 12, and 13 in block 508.
You should stop at the McCann's property.
Stop at the McCann's property line.
And would never be needed for any future anticipated public use, correct?
Correct. The property on the other side, most of it is the township property. There is one developed adjacent property that is kind of the McCann's across the vacated street neighbor, but we would have to reach out to those folks and just make sure that they're okay with the street vacation. But it's really, they're here because the zoning board asked them to come to the township meeting for the request.
You recommend this go through?
Excuse me?
You recommend that we have this?
I do. It would help the zoning condition on their property tremendously.
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
What we said, just so you're aware of it, we say approved. What happens is it's an ordinance, so we're going to contact the other neighbor to make sure there isn't an issue, and if there are any problems, it will be put on an agenda for action as an ordinance. Well, it'll be introduced and then published in the paper, then final adoption if it's, has its hearing and you approve.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 14, Upper Township Soccer Association requests to hold a 50/50 raffle at the Upper Township Community Center on May 3rd, 2014.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 15, under discussion, Community Forestry Management Plan Grant.
Paul?
Thank you. Mary, you may remember, I'm not sure, I don't think Ed was here at the time, or even Tony. Several years ago, they put out, or actually almost every year, the Division of Forestry puts out, requests that, you can apply for a forestry management grant. It's a matching grant, and they're encouraging towns to develop a forest management plan. One of the major benefits that a town can receive by developing a forest management plan is the township receives tort liability limitation, on damages from falling trees, because part of the forest management plan is developing educational program and inspection programs for township employees to make sure that we're looking out for, the trees that are in, failing health, and that we know how to trim trees and take care of those trees in a managed condition. So it kind of helps protect the township. So we had looked at applying for the grant several years ago. The committee had at that point decided not to proceed with that, but based on some of the committee's discussions about applying for grants, I asked Barbara to put this on the agenda to bring it back for your reconsideration to see if we wanted to apply for a grant. There is a matching portion of that grant. It's a $3,000 grant. We have to match that one for one, but the dollars don't have to be in cash. They can be in-kind services. So we could count my services towards that time. I could provide mapping and different services as part of the plan, so that the consultant that prepares the plan doesn't have to do those items as part of the match.
This has to do with trees that are dying, that kind of stuff, because do anything for gypsum mold control.
I would imagine if you talk to a forester, he would say a healthy stand of forest has a better chance of surviving gypsy moths and southern pine beetle and all the other various.
Give us insight as to if we need to spray this year or not.
The state has a separate...
The state has a program where they come by and inspect for that and let us know, hey, when the population of gypsy moths are increasing or decreasing, or at a point where they do that. But, I think from a forestry standpoint, a healthy forest is going to be a better forest to be able to survive any type of infestation, or gypsy moths or whatever.
What are we looking at township outlay for this? Now, you mentioned that part of this would be the time that you're spending, which would be an additional cash outlay, but beyond that, in terms of longer-term maintenance, are there any cash outlays from the township?
I think part of the plan is developing, making sure our employees are trained in, trimming and care of trees, which we already do a lot of that type of training on a basis anyway. We're already out there trimming, site triangles and looking at these trees and evaluating, hey, is this a tree that we can take down, or is it a tree that, because of its size or location, we need to hire a professional arborist to come in and...
But is this on our land or on the 40-some% of the township that's open space right now?
I think most of it is managing township, public properties, right-of-way areas, and those kind of areas.
Because I wouldn't want to see us be responsible for state-owned property.
No, it does not put any responsibility on us as a township entity in being proactive. The only proactive is being aware and being cognizant of, what trees are out there and what is a good, healthy tree and what isn't, and notifying proper authorities or agencies that might have the responsibility for those trees.
Once we find a non-healthy tree, what do we go with?
Excuse me?
If we see a tree that's not dead, what do we do with it?
we're going to do the same thing we do today. If we see a tree that looks like it needs to be taken down, we'll notify the proper agency. If it's in our right-of-way, we deal with it. If it's in a county, state agency, or if it's on private property, we try to notify those agencies. Sometimes those agencies have funding to remedy the tree, but, the obligation is, once we notice a potential safety issue, we notify those agencies, and we try to keep a log of that, so that way, that covers the township, that, if we've made a notification to an agency, we're covering ourselves for liability. And that's really what this grant does, is help limit the township's liability for tree issues.
So is this more of an educational grant to inform us on how best to manage the
Yes,
wooded areas in the township?
yes.
And of course, it's what, 3,000?
Well,
It's not gonna, it's gonna cost us $3,000 in-kind services if, I would estimate that I'd be able to account for $3,000 of my in-kind services and time to cover the match of this grant.
Well, it's up to you folks. I guess the other question is will this help us? I mean, we've been very fortunate. We haven't been in a drought-laden area as some of the folks in West are experiencing, but if something like that were to happen, that probably would give us some exposure if we had a drought, right? Does that in any way educate us on how to handle those kind of situations?
Yes, as far as for tree management.
You are insured otherwise.
Excuse me?
In terms of liability, you're insured otherwise as well.
It just helps, it's just another layer of,
It's another layer of protection. It means that you may not have a claim that would ever be paid out.
So I guess, what is it?
I'm with the motion approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's first and the second. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Nocera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Item number 16, amendment of the bond ordinance, number 5, 2013.
Is this the one you're talking about before?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, we're making a bond for,
The question, I think, was raised previously, and I'm going to defer to Barbara on it, that you have your bond set now with certain items, and there was a question as to whether you wanted to add or move around some of the items without changing the actual total dollar amounts, that's my understanding. And Barb's office and the bond counsel would need direction if that's what you wanted to do, so they could prepare the proper documentation and the amended bond ordinance. So I think that's why it's on the agenda, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that is correct. I tried to give you, I gave you two spreadsheets. One takes the total amount of the bond ordinance, the current bond ordinance, and breaks it down by purposes. There's different categories that bond counsel has set for different purposes that we've designated. I've tried to show you that there are available funds in certain categories of the bond ordinance. The second spreadsheet I gave you is a list from other departments of their requests, some priority requests, some secondary requests for some equipment for the township, so.
So the 2013 capital bond sheet that you put together, that, when you have the brackets, that's money that's available?
You have to look at each category, each purpose. There's purpose A, purpose B, purpose C. It's broken down because the bond ordinance is set up that designated certain purposes for certain equipment and certain amounts of money. For instance, in purpose A, that's a lot of our public works equipment, our trash trucks and snow plows and mowers and things. We designated a little over 1.5 million for that purpose. We've spent just about 1.4 million, although 379,000 of that is coming out of the recycling trust fund. So there is approximately $400,000 left in Purpose A of the bond ordinance. There is some further equipment that has not been purchased from that bond ordinance that is authorized to be purchased, although there is additional equipment also that may be discussed. If you look at Purpose B, the paving, there's $636,000 left in there. We had budgeted $1.5 million. We've only spent $864,000 of that. So there's $635,000 left in the paving project that could be redirected to for another purpose.
Basically, our bond was what, 3.5, 3.7?
3.7 was the total authorization.
We spent, out of that, 2 million?
Yes, we've spent just a little over 2 million so far on the bond
We
ordinance.
have,
But does that include the paving projects?
yes,
Yes,
so we have roughly $1.7 million to match the bond. Right?
that's correct. We have about approximately 1.7 left to spend in the bond.
Now, these items here were already in a bond. There's a 60-yard dump truck in the bond that was said it was big because of some ground or whatever we had to go, and we would have been on it.
It was, that, we did go out to bid on that 6-yard dump snowplow, but the bids were rejected because it exceeded the engineer's estimate, or exceeded the estimate for the truck.
And was that also on the difference between a stainless steel back and a steel back? Was that the other issue?
That's where
That
a
was-
lot of the cost
So for
difference
the
was.
$150,000 that we have here, is that for,
We are
okay.
We are currently authorized to purchase that 6-yard dump snowplow from the bond. It does not, although we rejected bids because it exceeded our estimate, it does not preclude us from going out to bid again. It is, we are authorized to purchase it through the
We
bond.
exceeded $150,000, is that what it was because it was 120 and we went to 150?
That we had estimated 125,000, and I believe the bids came in at 146,000. That's why they were rejected.
So now if you want to rebid it, and now that we have a figure here, 150,000, we're gonna go with that, right?
We can change our estimate and go out to bid again.
This includes everything we want in the truck.
You can change your estimate, or you can change your specs. I mean, there was some discussion that, do you need a stainless steel bed or whatever?
That's what we're here.
But from what we understand, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we receive new information that the stainless steel back isn't that much difference in the steel back? And so it makes sense to go with stainless steel, right?
Yes. So do we need to raise this 150,000, 154,000, or is 150 gonna be enough?
I believe the bid was 146,000.
That was with the stainless steel body. Okay, so 150, 150, okay.
So you want to increase our estimate to 150,000?
Yes.
And then we have to rebid it, right?
Correct.
Yes.
We have a truck on 17 that was already in.
No.
It's not in the original bond.
It is not in the original bond. The 6-yard dump with the plow is the only one that was in the original bond. To replace truck 17, 29, truck 1, truck 26, those are not in the bond currently.
Yes, we even had all this here for one.
So we need these 4 additional trucks beyond the other one? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, we got this one here. Yes, we need more.
Like I this.
The four additional trucks.
Yes.
That requires an amendment to the bond ordinance.
That's correct. That's $175,000, the estimate for those 4 trucks.
Is that correct, Chris? Is that correct? That's what we're talking about, what, John?
Yes.
So that's, that will be part of the bond.
Okay. All right, so you want
These are items in the meeting.
Okay, truck 17, truck 29, truck 1, truck 26, all those replacements you would like to add to the bond?
Yes.
Okay. There are enough funds in the bond. If you increase the estimate for the 6-yard dump, and then add these 4 trucks to replace, there's still enough money in Purpose A. We don't need to redirect any funds into that. We will need to add the 4 additional trucks into the bond, but we don't need to redirect any additional money into that purpose
So the
at this
money
point.
there that was originally allocated.
We just need to we need to amend the bond to authorize the purchase of those trucks.
Is that done by resolution? or-
No, ordinance introduced, amended bond ordinance introduced,
It will
published,
involve-
public hearing, vote.
It will involve bond counsel.
And now there are other items that they're not part of the bond. But the more it's there, you will have to see them, I'd like to see move that into the bond. We have containers, truckload containers, 8 of them, 2-yard containers. Is it cabinet chest, number 61, 67, so, meter packet?
I'm not, where are you at? I just want to see where-
Down to secondary request.
Oh, I see, 67.
Yes. Then we have a self-contained leaf vacuum. We need to, not that we need to, but we should, because we're spending more on energy and gas at the garage, we need to insulate our garage, not yet. There's we need an infield central.
And that's the thing that packs down sand for the field, is that what that is?
Baseball, right? And it is a pump down scratch with a 6,000 for, that's bad.
Yes.
Now, can we go the field for this, being we have a storm and more?
No,
No?
no,
Well,
no. Unfortunately, we can't.
we need it.
These HVAC units,
Well, we just talked about that, we get a price on that, and everything else on price come back, to maybe less than what we thought, as of now. I want to check that out.
That was just on the 2 units, so the 3rd one's going to need to be replaced also. You know, down the road, like 6 months, it might be a year.
Right,
They all have to be included as one project, though, just keep that in mind. All 3 units have to be included as one project. You can't separate
How does
it.
that change based on the fact that we just made a motion? that-
Well, it wouldn't be in the bond. It's going to be outside the bond. It could be, you could add it in later, yeah. But so you understand why Barb said that it has to be all of them? You can't split it up, and by splitting it up, then you avoid public bidding requirements. So that's why it's either an emergency for all of them, or it's not an emergency and you shut down.
There's one have to be changed, replaced now. I mean, we don't even have a year on one because we can replace that.
Tony.
So now we're not trying to circumvent the system.
No, Tony, because we have information that all 3 units are on their last legs, then we have to consider all 3 of them together. We cannot separate them.
And that's an opinion from your auditor, and it's got to do with public bidding requirements. People can't split up projects in order to avoid public bidding.
Because we really don't have to change the first one at this time. So we're not looking to circumvent the system. We need 2 now.
But what they're saying is that the life of the 3rd one, smaller unit, is potentially between, say, 6 months, and I heard maybe up to 2 years, but that's probably stretching it.
Well, the two are there shut down, we have to replace them.
Right. But because we know that third unit is not well either, we have to consider them all three together as one project.
And we have a contract in them today, can you look at all of them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I still have the other people to know.
I still have to call about one company back for the big units.
Okay, well, that's not gonna be in the bond anyway, so we're gonna decide something else, but the items are just named, so I'd like to see all these items moved to the bond, if the one's there.
Yeah, and if we do all three at the same time, then normally it's going to save us money in the long run. Because we're going to have crane fees one time, and the contractor, I think we can save substantially if he does all three units at one time.
Dan, how will you?
Where would that money go to?
How would you pay for it?
No, I mean, is this a suggestion to go to purpose A, or?
The items, bond counsel, I would give a description to bond counsel, and they would put these items that you're saying in whichever purpose they belong in. We would just move funds. I believe, I'm not sure about the pump for Seacliff Avenue.
It would probably go in section F, purpose F, building facility. Oh, no, that's security. The bottom line is they're gonna either create, it'll fit it in one section or create another section that describes it.
That's correct.
But a question, we include these in the bond now, what's that do to his time frame wise?
Bond counsel will let us know, they'll take a look at the amending items, and they'll let us know how it affects the bond. Right now, we're at 8+ years, 8 and...
I don't mean that, I mean as far as timelines for us to get this repair done.
Oh, for the community center?
The bond, time.
So we can get, I think we can get the work done and then just move the money over to the bond and then we're just.
For the community center?
Yeah. And we talked today, we have money in capital that we could take care of the two immediately. If we're going to go into bond, we have to include all three, or?
No, we have to include all three, no matter how we do it. All three have to be included together.
The money's not there in capital.
The money is there in capital improvement fund.
Do all three? And would that expedite the process?
But I think the question is, if we can space it out, because exhausting, that capital funds is usually something that we use in case we have a catastrophic weather phenomenon or something like that. Right, so I guess the question is, and I don't know the answer, maybe Dan, you do, or maybe you do, Barbara, if we were we go to move forward with the emergency situation, if we were to pay for it out of the capital funds, is there a way of putting it into the bonds and the bond replacing our capital funds?
I'm trying to say we can do that.
No. We can, there are a couple different ways to do it. You could pay for it through the capital improvement fund. You could budget for it. We don't have an adopted budget yet. We haven't even introduced our budget yet. So we could put it in the budget, in our capital section of our budget, to pay for these units. Probably the best way would be through the budget or capital improvement fund.
As far as time? Right now, if the other unit goes, we have to shut it down. And then we don't have...
That's why it's an emergency situation.
So it doesn't make sense for us to move this into the bond at this point.
Does not.
It does not.
Not if you want to keep the community center open.
All the heaters are 20 years old, so...
All right,
So we're excluding these receiving the community center, you read the lines there, let's see them in the bond.
I'm sorry, Tony, you want,
With the exclusion of the HVAC systems at the...
okay, you want all the rest of them?
Yes, it's, committee's okay with that.
well, while,
The tire lift,
You were taking time.
okay.
Actually, it's almost any year.
Pickup, how about the pickup number 39?
Yeah, what do we have, this and that?
yeah, the other thing I want, where there was a request and there's a need for the vehicle for the lifeguards.
Yes, that's down as well, that's the next section as well, it's the next section.
I don't have any, but if you don't mind, John had an idea on that. Okay. John, what was that we're talking about, workhorse, that's feasible.
Yeah, this might be an idea that might be a little more cost effective than a four-wheel drive pickup. And we thought about maybe a mule, one of those vehicles, it's similar to an ATV, it's a little bit longer.
We have one of those that the EMT people use, but the reason why we need the four-wheel drive is to move the lifeguard boats and the equipment, the personal watercraft, all the, life-saving rings and everything else, so they use the truck to really stage everybody every morning, move the equipment up and down the beach. The ATV that we have would not have the capabilities of doing that, not strong enough to do that.
I'm talking about one of the larger versions.
Well, they also use that to go and get maintenance equipment and things like that.
So they're on the streets with it.
Exactly. So, I mean, we have a four-wheel drive ATV or whatever it's called, that we use for EMT. But the other one, besides, its usage on the beach, is also used, they run and get things if they need to repair something or whatever, and they come over here to the yard, and there's and they move from lifeguard station back and forth with it and everything else, so.
Yeah, I was thinking they just needed something to tow the,
Yeah, no, it's both on the beach end as well as street driving as well.
Is that the one that the last group was, I think he said it was, if I'm not mistaken, he said it was like C1, just the words, just the numbers,
So I have to do this one first.
Yeah, well, I guess what I would like to do is be open with it, only because right now, when they're moving people back and forth, they're having them sit in the back of the pickup. And from a safety standpoint, I prefer to see if we could get, a double pad so that we keep everybody inside for safety reasons. Well, it may or may not be, but I mean, I'm just saying, that's what's being done now. So if we're buying a four-wheel drive, my preference would be to get a double pad just so that we make sure that no one's in the back of the cab when they're moving people. Because right now, that's what's being done. You know what, so I would suggest that if, in lieu of the fact that we can't put the AC in there, that would be something to move to the bond.
For the beach patrol pickup truck. Tony, I'm a little unclear as to all the items we're looking at the secondary request for Public Works. Which items are we excluding? We're excluding the HVAC units and the tire lift.
Tire lift and the HVAC units, yeah.
Okay, everything else is included?
Yes.
Okay.
We also have, that's something else on the list.
No, that was the other one that I
The
needed.
GPS with our trucks. And I can put it to the bond itself. This is the equivalent we need for GPS, correct there, Chris?
Yep.
It's, so we're not going to put down the bond too, more bond,
Yes.
and that's it.
That subtotal would be $185,700.
No, that's GPS equipment that
That includes the GPS in there.
I'm sorry, what else, the 1.1?
185,700. You're taking out the tire lift and you're taking out the HVAC units.
Okay, yes.
So it's a summation.
So the new
of everything else
subtotal-
that they request, and that includes the lifeguard?
No, and then we
That's the
add,
next section down.
and then we add the lifeguard, and that brings it to $220,700.
This year, right? The GPS?
The GPS I've added in there.
That's all I have.
All right, so Dan, for protocol, do we make a motion to move forward with this, do you draft an ordinance to change this?
The bond council would take these changes, insert them into the various sections of the existing ordinance and create an amended ordinance, and that would be introduced. I'm assuming the rest of the items on the additional requests are okay? That's the rescue squad request as
We
well?
haven't discussed any of the rescue squad requests.
That's the last
There's
section.
the last section for rescue squad requests in there.
They're asking for an ambulance at 225, convert the building from propane to natural gas, 14,000, new heater for the garage, 9.5.
The conversion, Jay, is that include the gas line from the meter to the generator? Or-
Yes. That was the gas on the generator as well.
Yeah, the gas line to the generator will probably be able to get reimbursed through the grant. That was only $2,500. So that number for that line is not in that price. For the gas line from the meter out to where the
So we just,
proposed
yeah,
generator.
we just have the generator self-converted.
That's all the heater.
Well, this is to convert for all the heater units in both the main building and the secondary garage,
How much was it?
14,000.
How many heaters in it?
3 heaters, so
Why don't they just change it?
2 waters.
2 hour heaters, 3.
Keep the conversion.
This was just, this was just a,
Not the hot water heaters, they use that.
What's that, a whole heater?
at this point, this is just a budgetary, we've got the budgetary, I think we'll go out and get 3 price quotes once the money gets authorized in the bond, we'll go out and get the full price quotes and make sure that, I think Jay and I both agree, that number seemed a little bit high for the work, but we'll go out and get the full price quotes but for budgetary purposes, yeah, it's better to be, for a budgetary purpose, that's a number we'd like to use.
Do you have a break? Not for nothing, do you have to have it this year, or can you wait till next year?
I mean, is it an absolute? No, but when you look at that number for repairs, the one truck's about 120,000 miles. That's not the easiest of miles.
Can we have room in the bond for that too, or?
I don't know if you have room in the bond for that. There's still some projects that haven't been completed. We haven't done the roof at Town Hall. We haven't addressed the building security issues.
Well, isn't all that in the bond already?
Yes.
Visit building security.
Yeah.
The boat ramp, the rec field improvements at Amanda's Field. There's the emergency generator, there'll still be some costs for that, I believe. There's still some radio needs, emergency shelter, so there's still some things that were originally put in the bond that haven't been addressed yet, have not been spent.
The money was appropriated for.
I'm sorry?
The money was appropriated for.
Correct. So I don't know that there is enough money, what I'm saying is, I don't know that there's enough money in the bond to do the projects that are still allocated in here, plus add an ambulance in there as well.
Now, when you say the projects that are allocated, you mean things like the boat ramp and the generator?
Yes, and the town hall roof, building security, emergency generator.
What was left of the bond was 1.7.
That's correct, but that includes these projects as well. Right, that haven't been, we have not encumbered any funds. We have not gone out to bid for them, we haven't moved forward to encumber any of that money yet. But yet they're in the bond, that we have authorization to do some of these projects in the bond.
I mean, you could remove the emergency generator, we probably will not have any cost. We've gotten some more information from FEMA on that grant, and it is gonna cover all of our costs for what we need to do for that emergency generator at the rescue squad. So you could, not have to allocate or maintain any line item for that item in the bond.
You know, with the emergency generator, that obviously, I would think that the FEMA grant would also include running the line to get the gas to it.
Yes.
So then that would affect that $14,000 on the...
That line to run was like $2,500, and that's not included in...
Okay, that wasn't included.
That was not included in
Okay.
those numbers.
What was the number for the ambulance, 225?
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that's high as well.
That was just an estimate that you had given me
I think if we look
last year.
for a cost-cutting measure, we look at just remounting the current box, the back of the truck on new chassis.
Right. I think we've done that before, haven't we?
Yes, it's been very successful.
Right.
The back is not what gets beat up, unfortunately. It's the-
I mean, from a long-term standpoint, we have a very good rate on the bond. So, I mean, if we don't replace it, and we can't do it in this bond, we're looking at probably replacing it next year at, potentially a much higher rate. So, if we can somehow swing it into this bond situation where it's going to be extended out over X amount of years, and, it just seems like it's the logical way of going if we can do it.
Could we look at a price for just a chassis?
A fresh number of
Look at new vehicles, what it's going to cost.
Just so you know, the rates on the notes are short-term rates, that we haven't locked into long-term financing yet, and that's a whole different discussion.
Okay, if it can't.
We're able to get a lower rate because it's short-term financing.
So if that's possible, he's gonna look for a price on it, that's price on it.
Well, we just locked in at under 1%. That's for 1 year. Permanent financing, you're talking,
We have to have a discussion with bond counsel and the auditor to see what other municipalities are getting, whether they're actually going out to try and, it's a judgment game as to whether or not you're locked in, just like, do you get an adjustable rate mortgage or do you get a 30-year mortgage? Yeah, and you, if you guess the wrong way, you're paying way more than you should be, so.
we've been fortunate though with our rates for the short term.
The current rate is very low. You're paying less than 1% for money, that's really low.
So we'll change, look into a better price, hopefully, and, if it's possible, let's see that in the bond also.
Okay. So you would like to see all of the items in the bond with the exception of the tire lift and the HVAC units?
That's
Okay. Okay.
Is that right, okay?
Yes, sure. All right, so we're good with that discussion? All right.
So basically, it's, you direct the purchasing officer to contact bond counsel to prepare an amended bond ordinance that includes those items that you've discussed. You can move that, but it's going to be on another agenda, so if you want that on an agenda, if there's a possible bond ordinance, you can motion and second it.
Want to make a motion?
Yes.
Second?
Please call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 17, planning and zoning board structure.
Right, so, did you work out the logistics of this, on how we can maybe use the screen and then we don't have it on cloud, right?
Yes, and there's in the SkyDrive, there's a deck in the planning and zoning board file. You can all pull it up on your computer.
What is it listed, is that the?
It's an Excel
025?
spreadsheet, you'll see it in there, the bottom.
This-
No, you gotta go up,
It's underneath the folders. Under the file folders, you'll see an Excel spreadsheet.
It's on here, right?
No, it's not on there.
It should be on, it's on the SkyDrive. It's not in the folder.
Zoning slides? Unfinished
Yes,
business under
on the
130.
zoning, look up top,
No.
that 113.
Yes.
Yeah. should be a PowerPoint.
Yep. Okay.
Is it 6 slides?
Yeah, 6 slides.
You have it? All right, so that means you can turn the screen that way so the audience can see what we're looking at. It's not working right. There we go. Can the audience see that? Can we turn it a little bit towards the audience? See what we can do so that people can see what we're... Is that good? Everybody can see that? Okay, great.
So currently what we have in the county, we have 6 of our municipalities that are using a combined land use board. They're Avalon, Dennis Township, West Cape May, West Wildwood, and Woodbine. Okay, on the planning board for the last 3 years, we've actually had planning board for the last 2 years, we've had a total of 18 meetings. Of those meetings, 55% of them were 30 minutes or less. Another 28% of them were over 1 hour. 16% of them were over 2 hours. And there were 11 of those meetings that had absolutely no applications at all.
Can you change that slide? He's on the next slide.
I can do it here.
That's volume.
That's what's about.
Okay, there were 12 resolutions in 2012. There were 9 applications heard. There were 5 applications heard in 2013 and 13 resolutions. In 2012, we logged a total of 8 hours, 8 3/4 hours in our total meeting time, and we logged a total of 6 3/4 in our total meeting time in the year 2013. Zoning board is a little bit of a different story. In the past 3 years, there have been 34 meetings. 13% of those meetings were 30 minutes or less. 17 of those meetings, or 37%, were over an hour. 20% of the meetings were over 2 hours. 18% of the meetings had no applications at all. And 10 of the meetings had carryover items that were generated from 4 of the applicants, or actually 7% of the applicants. And they were pretty significant. Most of that was occurring in 2012. there was a company, TR Associates, I believe, or a group of people who had some pretty complicated issues, which ran into about 12 additional hours that were spent discussing continuance items. In 2011, when we didn't have the additional carryovers with the meetings or the complicated matters, the average meeting time is about 45 minutes. The average meeting time in 2012 was 40 minutes. Some of the costs to the taxpayers right now that are costs that actually are, real visible costs that have the potential for changing. We pay a solicitor, a retainer for the zoning board, $11,907 a year. We also pay the solicitor the same amount for the planning board. We have some additional meeting fees for the board secretary in the amount of $2,600 for the zoning board. All right, and $1,000 for the planning board. And just to make a note here, the current arrangement with the planning board solicitor is that the solicitor is actually a payroll employee as opposed to a contractor, which is a typical setup for most of the other planning boards and zoning boards within the county. So therefore, we pay an additional 8.5% payroll contribution taxes since he is paid through the township payroll. In the event that we merge the zoning and planning boards, we're looking at an immediate savings to the township in the amount of about $15,500. Potential additional savings could be achieved by requesting proposals for the solicitor position to bring our retainer expenses in line with other local communities. Here's a few that I was able to pick up very quickly. Middle Township pays their board solicitor a $5,000 retainer. Middle Township pays their solicitor a $5,000 retainer. Dennis Township pays their board solicitor $400 a meeting. And the Woodbine board solicitor receives $1,125 a quarter, or $4,500 a year. So my purpose here is just to demonstrate that we can see an immediate savings to the township by merging these boards. Additionally, as we discussed before in our budget workshop, we've got over $500,000 to make up in our budget, and this is something that we can do very quickly to contribute to that.
At this point, we need to consider this the sentence. We just spent an hour workshop to try and go through the budget and to where there was more to be said. Again, we're taking a lot of items that the bond will become due. One expires and one comes due. There's a payment right here. The insurance is going up by about $400,000. It's more than we can come up with. Wherever there's any kind of savings that we realize, whether it be $50 or $50,000, we have an obligation for the taxpayer to save the money. With that in mind, being that the workload of both planning and zoning boards is not really that great, and actually it's diminishing. I see no reason to have two boards. Merging two boards into one, and the planning board serve as a dual-purpose board. At this point, to me, it would be the way to go. So, having said that, I'm making a motion now to join the boards.
Well, I don't, as I stated at the last meeting, I have no problem saving money. But I also have been reluctant to decrease in services, and I would like to hear what the public has to say. So if we move forward, we're going to have, obviously, it's an ordinance, and there'll be a public hearing. If there are appears to be a number of people that may be here to address the township committee on that particular issue. And I at least want to hear what they have to say, as well as what will be in the public, hearing portion. I am absolutely in favor of trying to save money. I think we worked very hard in the workshop as well, but I also think that, we have not typically ever cut the service out, and this is cutting the service out. And I just want to make sure that we respond to what the public has to say about it as well, and that's taken into consideration.
Well, in terms of cutting the service out, I don't think that we're actually doing that. And the reason I'm saying that is if you look at the hours spent on the planning board meeting versus the hours spent on the zoning board meetings in the year 2013, if you add up all the hours, it comes to a total of 20 3/4 hours. If you divide that over 12 meetings, it's an hour and 45 minutes a meeting. I think there's plenty of board time to give adequate attention and adequate service to the applicants. You can see that the applicant flow isn't tremendous. If it got to a point where the applicant flow did pick up and the service to the community started to diminish, we obviously can always go the other way. With current state of the economy, and the lack of new construction that's going on in the community, I don't see where we're going to be severely impacting a service that we're now providing.
Based on what we have, the service will not be affected at all.
I think in addition to what John did a lot of work on trying to come up with costs. I think what needs to be, we need to answer some other questions other than just what the cost savings would be. And I think there's a lot of people wondering what would happen in this transition and the reasons for it. What are some of the statutory reasons, Dan, that we want to come up with?
The legislative history essentially talks about the fact that small towns, and there is a limit, 15,000 population to have a single board.
Which were about 13,000.
We're at the upper portion of that. That they traditionally would have a hard time getting volunteers to fill the spots, and obviously these boards are volunteer boards. That's not to say it wouldn't be a rational and reasonable argument that if you're having economies or a low application flow, and there's less work for the boards to have one board, I think that's a reasonable argument that can be made. So, and it's not in the statute, that's not part of the legislative history, but I don't think that's unreasonable.
So as far as, population-wise, we're 13,000. 15,000 is the cutoff, right?
Yes, if you're over 15, you gotta have two boards.
What about also?
Now, when you combine this board, what would the board be made up of?
It'd be the planning board, it's not a combined board, it's a planning board. The statute says that a town with the proper ordinance can empower their planning board with the powers of the zoning board. In other words, the planning board will then operate as both a planning board and a zoning board. And it is still the planning board.
But the zoning board would be abolished.
The zoning board,
Members of your
yes,
zoning board-
you would not have a zoning board anymore. You have the planning board with the powers of the zoning board. And there's some internal, as we talked about in prior meetings, the mayor's designee of the mayor and the township committee person on the board would not hear use variances or what are called D variances that are the traditional jurisdiction of the zoning board. So they would step down and it would still be a 7-vote board that would handle that.
How about as far as efficiency? How do you think it would affect this as far as the board, this is efficiency?
Efficiency in terms of being able to handle the applications? If it was only 1 or 2 applications a month, they'd be able to handle it. Our planning board has more than applications. I don't believe there was a master plan review at the time of John's review. When you have a master plan review, the number of meetings go up, and that's traditionally the planning board. And we had a once-in-a-lifetime thing with the de-annexation, and that was 20-some meetings, and they were having Saturday meetings for 5 or 6 hours. So to do that and in a normal market, zoning variances, then you're asking volunteers to do a lot. But that's not the statistics that John's quoting. Neither of those circumstances occurred in the last 2 years.
Do we have an idea how many of those applications for the zoning board were use variances?
I don't know. I didn't do this.
Have that information. Computer is a challenge.
Well, John's looking for that. The cost differences, could that be made up in escrow?
Yes. In fact, most of the costs of a planning and zoning board, if it's structured properly, can be passed on to the applicants, either through application fees and billing the escrow. Things such as a master plan review, or if you had litigation, or if you had an issue such as the annexation, those costs could not be made up by billing an applicant. But almost all planning applications and variance applications can be billed to escrows.
And again, not to interrupt you, we had the same problem with the code enforcement office where there was loose money to make that out, we might have raised the fees. So, it's on tax. Let's go ahead, it's tax.
The difference being you can't generate more income in the construction office. You can only generate enough to offset.
Well, we do have the ability to raise the fees to pay for the construction office, and in the past, the Township Committee has decided not to do that for the reasons Tony is stating. They didn't want to burden the residents.
I had to say,
You can't hear?
So I was going with that, is I sat in 5 different municipalities over the last 20 years. And we've notoriously had the lowest escrow fees out of the entire area. You go to Ocean City, the average application is $5,000. And I don't want to see it go to that extent, because I think it is a burden on people trying to improve their properties.
It's being mindful of what you say.
The use variances of the 56 applications heard over the past 3 years by the zoning board, there were 9 of them, which is 16%.
The raise fees, it's just not a tax.
Again, the use variances are a whole different entity than a regular C variance. And of course, are a lot more stringent. I've got mixed reviews, I've got mixed feelings on this. And I understand the cost savings, but I also understand timeframes. When applicants come in, we have to proceed within so many days, or the township's in trouble.
And as John said, at any point in time, that should that be the case, the board can be established, maybe once, planning board will have to have 2 meetings in a month, or there might have to be 2.5 hours in one night.
Yeah, based on the time, it boils down to about 1 hour and 3/4 per meeting, based on the current applicant flow. Now, obviously, that could change. We never know what that's going to be.
I sat through the GNR application for almost 8 months.
Yeah, I was reading the notes,
And really, if you're going to have 2 meetings a month because of a backlog with an application like that, you better have a really good board to do it. And someone that's well-versed in making the correct findings. And I can foresee I'm not a capital member.
I think we've got a good board. I think we do.
I sat on this board for 2 years. And overall, it's the best zoning board I have seen out of 5 municipalities that I've worked with. So I have mixed feelings about this.
Well, if I may, we're not questioning the integrity or professionalism of the board.
When it comes to being sued, you have to.
We question the financial aspect of it. The board is not, it's not a manual job.
We can save $15,000.
Yes.
And cost us $50,000 in cost because we're not doing our job correctly.
But if you look at the planning board and invest it, with the duties to do dual capacity, that means that they're more qualified. It's not the zoning board, nor the planning board. The planning board, they serve the zoning board.
I know.
So that they're more qualified to do a job.
I have my doubts that the majority of our planning board at this point can do the job. Due to age.
We understand that there's a cost savings, but the other thing too is we have volunteers here who have sat on these boards through the years, they become educated, they understand the laws, they run very efficiently. Some of the reason why the meetings are shorter is because they've done their homework and they run their meetings quickly. And we have to take that into consideration. And I believe that right now, we've got a snapshot of 2 years. Everybody knows that it's slow, but it's going to pick back up. We're going to know. Yeah, I'm optimistic. I believe that's going to happen.
Really? All the things are from the worst, not that one.
Well, if we can save some money in the lean years when it picks back up, then we can obviously reach the board.
It's not something.
No, not see the money, not later. If there's anything to buy,
One at a time, so everyone can follow.
Yes, I have a question, sort of,
Sometimes we do it earlier, depending upon whether we want to, look at a section of town or different sections of town, but 3 years from now.
My second question would be, if we do away with the zoning board and turn this into just a planning board, and we have to re-implement the board, what would the time frame be to bring this back in again online and have them certified, qualified?
Well, certified and qualified, that's a personnel issue, whether you can get people with experience who've already been certified, that's a whole other issue. But it's a turnaround on deciding it. Look at the time frame you're looking at now in terms of before you even have the ordinance in front of you. But once you have an ordinance in front of you, once you've made that decision, you're talking probably anywhere from 2 to 3 months turnaround to get a board up and running.
And if we have an overload, it would depend on one board to carry that overload for possibly 2 months. That would be 2 to 3 months. Which, if you're doing
2 to 3 meetings.
2 to 3 meetings plus, that they have to go to double meetings, that means you're looking at 6 meetings in 3 months. And I just, I'm not sure that the planning board wants to do this. And I think they need to be asked if they're willing to take on this load. They're volunteers. They are not paid employees, they're volunteers. And I think I would like to have their input. I make a strong decision on this.
Well, the decision tonight would only be to move forward for drafting of the ordinance.
Yes.
It has nothing to do on changing what exists at this point.
Well, you don't have an ordinance in front of you, so you can't really act on anything other than tell your professionals what to do.
So, I know there's a number of individuals here that want to address the committee. We could take the vote now, and there's one more item on the agenda, then they'll certainly have the opportunity to address it. But, or we can ask people to come and speak now. I'll entertain what people would like to hear. You want to hear it now too?
Sure, I think we should.
So, okay. Since the committee has been sitting here since 6:30, we're going to have just a 5-minute break, just so people can do what they need to do. And in 5 minutes or so, we'll read, and then what we'll do is, we'll do this in a very organized way. You'll come up, you'll state your name and your address and what your point is, and then please try not to be repetitive. Please try and be courteous. And the one thing that for those of you that don't know, I don't appreciate those clapping if you're in favor and those clapping or booing if you're not in favor. Be courteous to everybody that has the president, because everything is being presented as important to this township committee to help us make this decision. So I think it's important that we are courteous to everyone, because everyone's opinion is important to this township committee. So 5 minutes.
did I tell you where my oldest daughter's working? Did I tell you? She's an assistant director of admissions down at Georgetown. Yeah. You know, when I was in school, I'm going to tell you, this is 1968. I worked in the admissions office. I had my mother to work there. That's how she got work in the admissions office. Because I knew work. You like Gravner? Huh? Like Gravner? Is that what you were? It's actually a cool job to have if you know it's neat. You get to learn about the alumni, who they are, where they are, and how these people, you know, it's good for a young person because she actually has to go give like talks. Like she was up in Boston last weekend, and I guess after a while I'll get grades on it, you know, and get a family to see there. So it's just mind it. Well, I was just a student. I'm working there, but you know, they pay me whatever, you know, a little bit, and help me out. We met a lot of people. The way she got it, and she my oldest, so she actually worked at the Township. She has a little plaque on her car. You know, really? You ever see those plaques of the kids that work at the Township? She's a little plaque. She's working at the Township, and Charlie would come in all the time. And I saw him at some alumni thing, and I said, yeah, she's kind of tired of working at the Township. He said, oh, really? She must work in the admissions. Tell her to come by. So what he did was, do you remember Valerie, his secretary? Black woman, very, you know, kind of co-sergeant. Well, anyway, she worked for her. And because nobody else really wanted to work for her, each one of my kids, when they went there, Kelly would introduce them, and Valerie would say, will you come work for me? So all of my kids have worked in their work. It was a great deal. I'm shocked that they actually do read everyone and thumbs up and thumbs down. And 80-90% of the ones, in her district, she does, I live in Jersey, she decides. And it's only like 10 or 20% that go to the committee. I'm thinking, holy crap, what the hell? She was presenting, so we have a huge responsibility. I'm going to change somebody's life, or I'm going to make somebody's life, or I'm going to make a bad decision for the school. You know, maybe the kid's going to be fine, but that is. Whenever somebody goes away and does something really bad, they run back to see it. That's a neat job. She was working in Manhattan with a media marketing firm. And she started looking for like non-profit work. Some universities up there and that kind of stuff. That's what we do. Yeah. Non-profit work. But she said, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. I'll be making her raises and stuff. And I'm stuck here. And she wasn't happy doing it. It's past your bedtime, right?
First, we have to make a motion to go in to allow the public to come forward, so there's a public comment period. So I'll make a motion that we go into public comment period. Is there a second? Second.
And that's just for item 17, is that what you're talking about?
For item 17, yes. So, and then we'll go back to the original agenda, we'll finish off 18, and then we'll go to, if anyone else has public comment that will address the council committee that's not associated with planning and zoning discussion that we're having now. So, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
So again, if you come up, state your name and your address, and again, I would stress everyone to be, very courteous. As you can see, I put my gavel over by Hobie, because I don't, in all these years, I've never struck the gavel, so I don't plan to do it tonight. So, what does that mean on the Who would like to go first? Mr. Mayor? Yes.
Members of the committee, some of you I know well.
State your name.
Yeah, some of you I know well, some of you I don't. My name is Jules Conchar. I'm a partner in the law firm of Silver Conchar. But probably more importantly, I'm an Upper Township resident since 1974. My specialty is land use, zoning and planning work. I probably have, well, it's probably a fair statement that I've handled more applications at the Upper Township zoning and planning boards than anybody over the course of 40 years. I also have pretty active practice. I've appeared in virtually every municipality in Atlantic and Cape May County over those years. I just wanted to give you the benefit of, my thinking and my experience. And I got to tell you that a lot of comments I heard, pro and con, because there's pro and con to everything, from the board here, from the committee, were great comments and the same kind of thing that I thought of as a taxpayer. Everybody's, all taxpayers, everybody, committee is interested in what savings we can have. I will tell you this, I've appeared before some of those municipalities and worked on applications where they have combined the boards. I don't know if anybody else here has done that. I can tell you that it is not a good process, in my opinion, to have the one board. There's confusion in the board, there's confusion in the applications, there's a bunch of cross-training that has to happen, and it makes it kind of difficult for the presentation. I mean, sometimes you go to the combined board, there's a whole sorting out process of who gets the vote tonight, who doesn't get the vote, who gets the comment, and there's a lot of cross-training. So after thinking about this and going through the statistics, I sort of come out that things here in Upper Township, in my opinion, have worked pretty well over the 40 years that I've seen. During that period of time, there were times that zoning and or planning meetings went till, before Judge Gibson made his decision, went till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, took forever. Now we have to stop taking applications at 10:30 or 11. So there were many years that the meetings went late, and there were 2 meetings a month, and there were a lot of special meetings. Now, special meetings are tough, because everybody's got a schedule. So if you wind up having to draw on the same pool of volunteers to handle the functions of both boards, there's a good chance that you'll wind up with a bunch of special meetings. There's expense involved with that. There's scheduling, and, can you get a quorum? Can you get enough people to do it? Because, who's traveling and who's not. The functions of the boards are somewhat different. The planning board has the master plan review. They have, if you got a commercial application or a subdivision, they could handle minor variances, but they don't handle D variances, which are the more serious kinds of variances. So I've basically come out that I think the system works pretty well. I think we should save some funds. I don't think the way to save the funds is necessarily to abolish one of the boards. I think you can look at the structure of what it is you're paying now and find some economies within that structure. And there were lots of mentions. I mean, Hobie mentioned, these boards are meant to be kind of self-sustaining. You look at the overall expenses and you say, well, what should they be? And you make them what they're supposed to be, and, there's escrow fees and application fees, and, I'm not for raising them to really high levels, but when we look at this whole picture, if ours are lower than everybody else, maybe something isn't right with that. If our expenses are higher than everybody else, maybe something isn't right with that. But I don't think the remedy is necessarily to give up this structure that we've had all these years. And we got 11, I guess now, people with the alternates on the zoning board, because we have an opportunity for more volunteers. We have 11, I guess, at least on the planning board. These are people who worked a whole lot of years on both of the boards, and to not recognize their service and to allow
this to continue, I think is kind of a disservice to them. And let me tell you, if you have 11 or 11 and 22, and then you're down to 11, you're never going to get those 11 people back, and you're not going to get that training and expertise, and it might be fine for a year or two, but I think you can save for the taxpayers within the structure, and, make it a win-win for everybody, for the applicants, who, are going to get a faster, better, more efficient hearing with two boards, and for the township, because I think you can get some budget savings by looking at the way it's implemented rather than the whole structure. So I thought about it long and hard. I have some experience where they had one board, and it's not overwhelmingly positive. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully my experience will be some benefit to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Paul Sacchio, 5 Cedar Hollow Court, Beasley's Point. I'm coming both as a resident and a member of the zoning board. What I decided to do when I heard about all this, I reached out to some of the other members of other boards, especially in Dennis Township. I know Al Budo. Al Budo was the chairman for 2013. I said, Al, why did you guys go to one board? They had another issue, and it had to deal with, they had an environmental commission. The environmental commission was very costly for them to run, and the environmental commission was losing their municipality a lot of ratables. One of the ratables they ended up losing was the gentleman Ford to Woodbine. So that was their reasoning behind it. And I asked Al, I said, any efficiency and any dollar savings? He said, we're not really saving any dollars. We're only saving it because we don't have to fund another board. We're lucky we do not have an environmental commission here, which is expensive. He says there's still 2 meetings a month. They have a workshop and a regular meeting. We have a workshop and a regular meeting too. The workshop gets rid of all the headaches. John went into how the meetings are so short. Well, I'm going to tell you, 90% of it is handled at the workshops or the completeness hearings, whatever you want to know. And that's why the meetings go so smooth. The applicant's there, they're prepared, represented by a professional, and it just moves a lot smoother. So if you're looking at time, there's reading for that. Also, he said, of course, Dennis Township's a lot smaller, approximately 6,000 residents, where we're running into 13,000 residents. Also reached out to another person, and everybody knows this name, Steve Nemeth, #1 land use attorney in New Jersey, just about. Represents everybody from Walmart. He's been all over the place in every municipality, every county in the state he's worked in. I looked down to Steve, I said, what's your opinion of it? And Steve said, forget it, especially if you have town centers. If you have town centers, you don't want it, you're going to discourage the developers from coming in. I said, what do you mean? Why? Because anybody that comes in with a possible food store, other than ShopRite here, is facing a 13-meeting hearing before we get to appeals and appellate court. ShopRite always files. They did it to them in Rio Grande, they did it to them in Egg Harbor Township, and they just did it to them in Mays Landing. So it's going to happen. And I said, Steve, why do you say that? And Steve came back to me and said, well, realize this, your town center is first of all in place, which is what all the big developers are looking for. He said, you're 20 miles south of the next town center, which is Rio Grande, and to the north you have the Egg Harbor Township town center, which is 10 miles. There are people snooping. As he speaks right now, he would not give me any information, he would not give me any names, but he told me people are snooping. How's that? So that's a positive thing for the town, and another good reason to keep the zoning board intact. Last but not least, I came across some other items. You're going to get a copy from one of the other members or our attorney, what Cox says. Cox is the land use Bible, plain and simple. They refer to moderate savings, and they're absolutely right. This is moderate savings compared to what we're spending in the township in general. That's number one. And number two, it goes into many other reasons why we should consolidate boards, and I'll let you read the Cox. Cox is the land use Bible. We've used it for how many years, Dan? It's been a long, long time. As far as this comment, zoning is always behind technology. It happens every time. The reason why I'm saying this, planning boards should be proactive. Unfortunately, most planning boards are always behind the 8 ball. Technology always outpaces zoning, and a couple examples are cell towers, solar panels, windmills. All this technology hit us, and we had no zoning in place for it. So I'm saying, the planning board isn't that busy, they should be proactive. And the other area they should be proactive in is what's going to be coming out in the next 2 months is the color. Everybody knows the new round's coming out. It was due 5 months after the Supreme Court ruling, so we have to become proactive in this area. These are the areas the planning board should be addressing, not to encumber them with a bunch of zoning board applications and trying to deal with this item. We skated by it before, a large lawsuit. We don't want it to happen again. We think we're in good shape, but we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 months when the new round comes out of the requirements for it. And last but not least, I'm going to close with, we have a bigger problem down the road. It's called BL England. We should be focusing our efforts on that place right now. That goes away. Our little $15,000 savings is minor. Nancy Wittenberg from the Finance Commission needs to hear from you. People from South Jersey Gas need to hear from you. Bill Brown, Mr. Jackson from West Cape need to hear from you. We're teamers, guys. That's the most important thing in the world to us. So our efforts should be focused on dealing with the members there and the Finance Commission. Thanks for your time.
If BLE closes, you get $15,000 because it almost informs the township. The plan closes down. You're right, you got a bigger problem. $15,000, we need $15,000, they have more than that.
But I concur with what
It's not peanuts, it's $15,000. If the plan shuts down, we're going to need.
Well, I concur with Mr. Konchak said. We need to look at our application fees, we need to look at our spending, and we need to look at...
$15,000, not peanuts. And what is to you? Not the rest of the township.
It is to everybody, but we should be focusing our efforts on the BL England generating station, dealing with the Finance Commission, and dealing with some of the other entities out there.
That all belongs to us.
Okay, thank you.
You walk faster than that, I'm way ahead of you. Mr. Mayor, members of the Township Committee, I want to give you my resume.
Need your name.
I'm sorry, I will get to that, Mayor, give me a chance. I don't need to give you my resume, but my name is Ted Cleaback, and I live on Summerside in Seaville. I have served this township for over 50 years, athletically, educationally, and publicly. Again, part of the resume. I am a member of the United States of Columbus, past president of the Ocean City Exchange Club, and a former member of the Kiwanis Club. And the reason I tell you this is I'm not a stranger to the community. And I hear constantly all over the place at the Acme, Dano's Diner, and the restaurants, the Wawa, gas stations. Why are our taxes increasing? Example, we have the greatest volunteer fire companies in the world. We have the greatest fire rescue people in the world. But they ask me, why is my municipal tax less than the fire tax? Why is my fire tax not much less than the municipal tax? Mr. Cleaback, they call me, still, some call me Ted. Dan calls me Mr. Cleaback, and he's an outstanding township solicitor. And they ask me these questions, and I don't know the answers to them. Okay. But I stress to my students in the 40 years of teaching that township committees, mayor, council form, commission form, are responsible to the people they serve. And I constantly said to them, they are our protectors of our pocketbooks, they are the protectors of our lives, they are the protectors of our homes. Whether you save $5, $10, or $100, a dollar saved is a dollar not spent. And if there's a savings on anything, and I know some zoning board members aren't going to like what I said, and I love them all, they're all excellent. I've served a long time on the zoning board. But it is your job to save the money of the taxpayers. And these are some of the questions that I've been asked. And I congratulate all of you for serving the public and going through all the emotions that you do to get elected. There's not many people want to do that anymore. So these are some of the comments that I hear around the township. And we have to look at things as they are. We cannot stimulate egos, nor can we offend egos. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor and the Township Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name's Ray Leps, 1150 Route 50, Petersburg. I'm the TNR bandit. Our meeting would never have happened if it wasn't for the way the board set up. I've been in front of them 3 times, and not anybody. I don't know any, well, I know some of you guys, but some I don't. But to re-educate that, to me, is financial suicide. I'm talking to you as a businessman, owning 3 companies, and they're well exceeded into the numbers. But the point I'm trying to make is I look at this from a business perspective. Even if you guys are talking like that, your numbers are off. Just sitting here, I can see the numbers are off. But you're talking $15,000. $15,000, I can't hire a guy for a year for $15,000. So we have the convenience of this board to come to us. I sat, and they had to make special meetings for us and all the other things we had to do, just what the board we already had. So to disassemble that and try to put it back together, then that's kind of repeating, but that's, to me, it's financial and bad business decision overall. Mr. Conley, I didn't know he sat on the board, I see him as a businessman, and I think to myself, well, you know, he runs a business, why would he think that cutting a board and then trying to reassemble it, it's like me taking my head mechanic and saying, hey, they'll stay over there for a year or two, and well, things pick up, I'll bring you back in again. No, I gotta sustain that however I can, based on this economy, which none of us know where it's going or what it's doing. It's a shuffle of the dice, but we gotta make these logical decisions. And the logical decision is, you know, I see all the money that's spent in other places in the town, and I go, why would you cut that? And I'm not sticking up for anybody on the board, but I will tell you this, I didn't do it because of ethics. But when they were done with us, and the way their professionalism and the way they handled themselves was off the charts. I don't have to send them something, but I thought in my heart, after knowing lawyers like I know lawyers, you don't want to do that, it's conflict and all that nonsense. But they did do a great job for us in all my cases. So like I said, to disassemble that, I think we're tripping over dollars for the pennies at the end of the day, quite honestly. And if you have any questions about that TNR thing, those people were here. We took a whole meeting. It should have been, in my opinion, but that's the way the law works, so that's what we had to do. If you guys had to do that, you couldn't find the time to do that, or a one board. We have how many people in the community? Then when I see you're using examples like Dennisville and Woodbine, no criticism to them, oh my God, what do they got going on? Realistically, those towns don't have going on. This town has going on. I think you've got to relate us to Ocean City. You look at Ocean City, then you look at us. Then you go down the line. I'm not knocking the other towns, but that's a reality of the situation. So if you have any questions about the TNR meeting, like I said, I'd be more than glad to entertain that. I appreciate you trying to save money, but my God, guys, not here. This doesn't make good sense at all to me. And again, having a business that I have, I can't hire a guy for $15,000 for one employee. And I have people that work for me, and I know what the economy is, but I gotta be ready. I gotta be able to stand. I gotta be ready to go, and I can't close my doors. You can't close your doors. Taking out the door, you're closing your doors to business. And then, like you said, you get somebody in here, another developer, I don't have overdevelopment, I'm no fan of it. But if we gotta do things, how are we gonna get it done? And then to build like that structure, you gotta look at the wrong picture. It's really a business. You gotta be treated as such, and if you don't, I think you're gonna fail with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Susanna Lucy Schmidt, and I live at 7 Belcroft in Seaville. I'm a member of the zoning board, and I've been a resident of Seaville for the last 18 years. I'm here to testify tonight in favor of keeping the Upper Township zoning and planning board separate. Upper Township, as you know, is a very diverse community. We have beautiful wooded acres along with thriving residential neighborhoods and retail corridors. The beauty of Upper Township has been maintained through careful and intelligent land use management. The planning board is not an autonomous board. Zoning is autonomous, which is the precise reason why it should stay independent. It's a citizens review board, and I'm one of those citizens. Because it's a citizens review board, it alleviates the opportunity for abuse. Items that come into planning are different than zoning. The planning board is business related, it's global. Zoning applications are parcel specific and neighborhood, and more scrutiny is put on the little things. If the boards are combined, it will do the residents a disservice. These boards have separate functions and should remain independent. In addition, there's no proof that combining the boards will save any significant amount of money. In fact, I have with me an article from the New Jersey League of Municipalities which documents that fact. Lastly, I ask you, what message does disbanding the zoning board send to the community of volunteers? Residents who volunteer their free time to help make these important decisions that affect and mold this very community. It doesn't send a positive message. So in conclusion, I respectfully ask that you consider keeping the zones in the zoning board and planning board independent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else like to address the Township Committee on this specific issue, planning and zoning?
My name is Andrew Shaw, I live at 6 Lake Corson Lane. I'm currently a member of the zoning board, and I've been a member since 2005. I'm coming to give public comment in support of separate planning and zoning boards. Thank you, Mr. Coggins, for research on the cost savings, potential cost savings, and also the different planning and zoning board in other municipalities. There is documentation, however, that says there is very little evidence of any real cost savings affected by board consolidation, and some municipalities that consolidate find that their planning boards end up needing far more as a result of the consolidation. I would also submit to you that West Wildwood and Westgate Lane are also very different places than Upper Township. As a contractor, I've worked in both municipalities recently, and the makeup of the community is very different. One of the differences between to my way, I think one of the most striking differences between the planning board and the zoning board is the structure, where a planning board has different classes of members. The zoning board does not have those classes of members. So when an applicant comes before the zoning board, it's more like a fair hearing in front of their peers rather than a formal board with different classes of members. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Keith Jack. I'm 24 Stagecoach Road in Winwood. I've been before, not as an applicant, but as a concerned thing, and for a lawyer probably 3 or 4 times each board. Haven't agreed with them all the time. In fact, I've actually seen the board before it's peer review with my lawyer, and I just think that if you combine the boards, you're not saving yourself money, you're going to cost yourself money, because people are not going to think they got a fair share, that there's only one board, and you're going to wind up in court more than that, and you're going to be paying Dan and Mr. Mark Lockett a lot more money defending the board's decisions than you will have saving money. Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Al Mayo, 48 Plains Lane in Claremont. I'm also a new member of the zoning board, and I just want to say they really are a very dedicated group of people. They ask a lot of pointed questions. I think they really serve the people better. And I don't understand, I understand the cost-cutting nature, and I'm all for saving money. But there's a term here, and it seems to get lost, called cost-effective. And if you really break down the $15,000 and average it all out, and I think Paul pointed out, a lot of the time savings is done in the workshops. And they really are very thorough in the workshops. You know, these guys come in early, they sit here, people come, and if they don't have one particular part, they get sent away, so they're not wasting anybody's time. So, you know, I don't see this as being a cost-effective measure. It's a cost savings measure, but there is a difference, and I think that should be considered.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rick, I have one more thing.
As long as there's not anybody else that hasn't said something first. And then you can come back to the debate.
Real quick. Good
evening, everyone. My name is Chris Piper. I live at 18 Elizabeth Lane, Ocean View. I'm also a member of the zoning board. I'm not here trying to save my job in the zoning board. But I do want to say that there's a couple things. One, the members of the boards are volunteers, we know that. But for the most part, we are self-educated volunteers. And I think that you're asking a self-educated volunteer, you're putting a lot of burden on them to understand both zoning and planning. And I'm not sure if that's a fair burden to the township. I think you're really exposing yourself to litigation by doing that. I mean, I think we do have a really good zoning board, and we've already been in several cases over the course of the last couple of years, and it costs a lot of money. And I think you're exposing yourself to a lot more litigation by not acknowledging the fact that these aren't professionals on the boards, and they're never going to be. It may be a flawed system because of that, but that's our system. So I think to save $15,000, which in the big scheme of things could really be nothing compared to one lawsuit, I don't think it's cost effective at all. I think that you've also, I can't imagine too many times where you've tried to create a cost-cutting measure and it had this much adversity against it. As a business owner, I think one of the best attributes I have is I listen to my staff. And when my staff's telling me something that I don't agree with, there's many a time when I sit back and I do it their way because you have to listen to the masses sometimes, even if it's against your best judgment, and you end up learning a lot. I think in this case, some of the board members here are enthused about saving money and have attacked the problem from a one angle, which is to save money. When if you listen to some of these professionals, Jules, there's a bigger picture here. And if you look at the problem from a that perspective view, you'd see that this isn't a cost-saving measure. This is a measure where you could potentially lose a lot more money than what you're trying to save. So that's all I have to say unless you guys have any questions.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Joe McFay. I'm the township president. Been here for 17 years. I'm also part of Engineering Design Associates. We're presenting applications in front of the boards for the last 25 years. And had a chance to have some short ones, we've had a chance to have some long ones. And unfortunately, when you only look at a 3-year period, there could be a time right now it's slow, the economy's slow. But I've been here at the meetings, we've been here till 11 o'clock tonight, 12 o'clock tonight. If you start to put that into the mix, the homeowner is serious to get a variance for a shed, next you know he's put off 30 days, 2 months before he can put up the shed. We have a lot of do-it-yourselfers in our town, a lot of people that take pride in doing that. But if you combine the boards, and we do get busy again, I realize you can establish it, but bottom line is those people are going to get put back. You could have township residents put back 2 months before you get their application heard, just for simply to put an addition on their house. And that's one of the things I think you got to take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before someone is...
Good evening, everybody. Matt Unsworth, 2 Farm Road, Petersburg, New Jersey. I also am a member of the zoning board here. And just a few comments. One, the zoning board is a service that is provided to our community and is required to be provided by our community. And our zoning board does a fantastic job. And it's a service that by combining the boards, I do not feel that a planning board can serve this community in the capacity that's necessary. I know, John, you only went back 2 and 3 years for your numbers that you used for zoning and planning. If you were to take a look at the years, say 2005 to 2010, I think you would find very different figures. And unfortunately, I don't think it's as simple as when things get busy again, let's ramp it back up. You will not have the same quality of board. You will not have the same number of volunteers. And even though logistically you may be able to put a board together in 2 or 3 months, you will not have a functional, qualified board, and that will lead to mistakes being made, costly mistakes being made, and in the long run, I think this, the decision to combine both boards would be a costly one to the township. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening.
Dean Marcolongo, 402 Park Avenue, Marlboro, New Jersey, and I'm the solicitor of the Planning and Zoning Board. And yes, I have a vested interest in this matter here tonight. I'll acknowledge that right away. I provided the board members with a copy of Section 2-9 of the Cox Trees, which Mr. Saccio said is the Bible for planning and zoning. And it states, as Mr. Young had stated earlier, that the origins of the law permitting consolidated board were based upon very small towns that did not have any year-round residents in order to have enough volunteers to come on out and staff both a planning and a zoning board. Clearly, that is not the situation here in Upton Township. We have a sufficient population in order to staff both of those boards, and both of those boards are staffed very well right now. As a matter of fact, we're right on that borderline where we would not even be in a situation where we would be permitted to do that. But if you do make this type of change, what you're going to be doing is consolidating all the authority and land use power in one particular board. Right now, you have the planning board, which is appointed by the mayor, and you have the zoning board, which is appointed by the governing body. What we would be creating a situation is where the mayor would have the power to appoint the entire planning board. And is that what we really want to do, is consolidate all the power with Mr. Palumbo? I don't think we want to do that. It also reduces the amount of community involvement and community input. Right now, you have 11 members of the zoning board, you have 13 members of the planning board. These are 24 voices that are out there that are able to deal with these particular issues to come before the particular boards. And if you combine the boards, you're going to lose that community involvement and have those volunteers taken away from the opportunity to be a part of their community. The planning board will have to do the work of two boards. I agree we're in a slow time right now, but it will pick up, it always has. And when that happens, it's going to put a lot of stress on the planning board members. And it will be tougher to get volunteers to do that type of work. Also, as we've heard from a couple people here tonight, it really, combining the two boards really doesn't deal with the different jobs that the planning and zoning board has to do. The planning board they're the visionaries of a particular community. And they do informal work with the developers as they go along. And the planning board should be, in a way, I think, in step with the administration. Not the puppets of the administration, but in step with where the governmental body wants to go. They should be that way, and that's, I think, why the mayor gets to appoint the planning board. The zoning board is more of the conscience of the community. And they should be an independent organization that has the opportunity to sit back and say, when these applications come before the board, that we're going to look at it and make a decision whether we're going to grant these variances from our zoning ordinance. Again, they're the conscience of the community. And I think you need that two different elements with two different boards. Finally, I would note that although we seem to be talking about money here tonight, and that seems to be the issue that we're talking about, nobody has at any point addressed that issue with me. Nobody has ever come to me and said, Mr. Marcolongo, is there an opportunity to possibly adjust the expenses that are related particularly to the township? I'm willing to make certain accommodations in order to keep these two boards. That's how important it is to me. I don't think that having a combined planning and zoning board is appropriate for Upper Township. And again, I'd be willing to make certain accommodations just because I believe that it's in the best interest of this community that we continue to have the two boards. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else before? Come back up.
Want my address again?
No.
For the record.
I'm going to do it quick with you guys, I didn't write it down, I apologize for that. But I am in a situation now, over a bridge, of a single board, and we are taking them to court, because they don't have the knowledge that's necessary for them to make the correct decisions. And this board has made the correct decisions, and it's been brought up. You know, I always feel like saying, is it $15,000? I'll give you $15,000, so run a year, see what happens. If it works out, give me my 15 back. I mean, I don't care about that, because I don't think that's a substantial number, it's going to make a big effect in our community. I mean, when you look at the numbers for trucks and on, not we don't need them, I just don't think I think they're lost in that little number for what we're getting for it. But the main thing I want to tell you is, I know it's costing me, and I know it's costing that town at this point. So I think that's something that really has to be looked at as well. Thank you, sorry for the double.
All right, if there's no other comments, I'm going to close that portion. And we'll come back to public comment in just a few seconds, because we only have one other item on the agenda. Let's see, my computer went off.
Would you like to move on to item number 18?
There's a motion, there wasn't a second. So, I mean, well, I'll call for a second.
What's the motion?
Do we proceed to merge the boards?
Well, it would have to be, you're saying proceed.
Well, I'll proceed with the ordinance and schedule it for introduction.
For second? Okay. So there's a first and a second. I prefer to postpone it to another meeting, because I would like to, we made an offer tonight by the attorney that basically is where our cost savings is coming from. And before we make a vote on it, I would at least like to see what we can explore saving that. And if it's substantial to where we need to be, I mean, we can continue to have the service that's being offered and save money. So, I mean...
Are we permitted to make a decision based on an offer of money?
Well, you're allowed to make a decision based upon your perception of any cost savings. I don't know what would happen. You don't contract with Mr. Marcolongo. You provide a budget for the Planning and the Zoning Board. However, if the Planning and the Zoning Board are requested to review their budget in light of Mr. Marcolongo's comments, then that could be something that would impact your opinion as to what the real cost savings are.
Okay.
So how will we proceed?
Well, you have a motion on the floor now. You can, if you want to go in a different direction, you withdraw it. But what I would suggest, if you want to pursue that thought, then a request would go to the Planning and Zoning Boards to review their budget and their compensation package, maybe even how they bill escrows, to see if you can come up with something that has the savings or near it, and you can preserve the two boards. That's possibly what could be done. I don't know where the numbers will come. I don't think negotiation in public is a good idea for either side.
I'm not suggesting, that's what I thought that I would defer for 2 weeks to try and figure out where to set. Listen.
Well, you may need to defer a little longer because the decision is... You may need to defer...
I think we've done our job. Okay.
You may need to defer it longer because I don't know when the meetings are occurring, but there should be probably, if you want to go in that direction, you would ask the clerk to communicate to both the zoning and the planning boards and ask them to review and sharpen their pencils with respect to the budget and the professional contracts and report back to the township committee.
This vote, however, at this point would be a vote to move forward with preparing an ordinance, which wouldn't necessarily have to be passed.
No.
So if we...
But it does, every hour I spend doing something costs the township money. That's the only thing, that's the only issue.
This is a very important decision for this township, and I understand the ramifications for saving money. I also am conscious of services that we offer to this township. And this is something that we have not done as long as I've been on this township committee. And that doesn't mean it's right or wrong, okay? We need to come up with a way to save money, and we need to continue to provide the services that are offered. If we can do both of those and accomplish that, then we've won both ways. If we can't, you have my word that I'll support the ordinance to go forward to save money. But I don't want to vote at this point not knowing if the savings is there that you pointed out in your presentation. So we make a decision, if we vote tonight, we move forward, we pay Mr. Young to draft the ordinance. But I certainly wouldn't be willing to entertain the public hearing of the ordinance until we hear what negotiations could potentially take place. I mean, that's my opinion.
what we have in hands in 2 weeks, and what the sales will do.
I don't know the schedule of the meetings. I don't think either of them have meetings. Second and third Thursdays of the month. So you're really talking about our second meeting in February to get a full response.
Unless, and here we are, asking them to do something more as a volunteer, they decide that the meeting may be pertinent, to have a special meeting to discuss fees, that we could somehow arrange to discuss this in 2 weeks or whatever. I mean, I'm not asking anybody to overdo the volunteerism, but that's an option as well.
Well, I think it's putting it off them to want to entertain a thought of having a meeting, just for that.
Then, so are you willing to withdraw your motion, or continue with your motion for the vote at this point, or you make the suggestion? I would suggest, no matter what, it's re-agendized in 2 weeks. So we're now putting it in the planning and zoning board's hands to make a decision on whether this, because most of the people that commented here were those that are serving on the zoning board. So I would ask that, if it's that important, that you dedicate some time to having a special meeting to discuss that type of thing. But, I mean, we can't, we're in the midst of trying to go through a budget where we're looking to cut an extreme amount of money. And we just ourselves decided to have another meeting next Monday for 3 hours, just because we realized this is not going to be an easy task for the 5 members of this township committee. And that's really driving a lot of this discussion right now.
Rich, I'll try to get together a special meeting because I don't want to do it at the regular meeting because we have the water tower. It's going to be a long application as it is. There's going to be a lot of presentations. You have a lot of planners, and I don't want to tie their professionals up with this. It's not fair to the applicant. And I think we have another 2 applications on for that night alone.
See, that's the point. Why undermine these volunteers? It's ridiculous. Really is.
Well, if I had the ability to negotiate with Mr. Marcolongo personally, or to represent this township committee, that's what we would do, except for that we have not hired Mr. Marcolongo, the planning and zoning board have. And we have to rely on their negotiations that we can come back. I mean,
who negotiates with him since he gave you that offer? Is that all obvious?
It's the board.
Maybe I can explain this for the public as well. The zoning and planning board are independent bodies. They hire their own professionals. They hire their own engineer, they hire their own township, they hire their own solicitor. The township committee provides them with, under the law, a reasonable budget to operate their business. In our town, we've provided, and as Mr. Coggins indicated, a salary to the zoning and planning board, not just for Mr. Marcolongo, but also one of our employees is dedicated to each of those boards. Not full-time, but for part of her salary. That's a budgeted item. Theoretically, the township committee could say we're reducing $7,500 budget for each of the boards this year. Planning and zoning board come back and tell us how you're going to do that. You could do that and say that's reasonable, but that hasn't been discussed. I thought the appropriate response based upon Ms. Marcolongo's comments would be that the zoning and planning board would then come back and say we don't need this budget. But that's the way the give and take could come. In budgeting, you're doing the budgeting now, you can reduce the salary line items and reduce the budget for the zoning and planning board. Whether it's a reasonable budget or not, I guess the board could complain about that and come in, and there has been isolated incidents of litigation over the years where a municipal board has said to the township committee, you haven't given us enough money, and you're doing it for other reasons. I don't think that's the case here. It sounds like you're much closer than that eventuality ever happening here. But bottom line is the employees, the engineer, the secretary, and the solicitor are employees of each of the individual boards. So the contract has to be between the board and that employee.
Mr. Mayor, I think the bottom line is that you're all pledged to protect the citizens of this community in all respects, financially, socially, etc. I don't think that we can legislate on the basis of personal basis, but rather for the community as a whole. And I've listened to the arguments that are presented for and against, and I agree with all of them. but you have an awesome decision, all of you, to make a judgment as what is best for the interest of the taxpayers of this community, not us, the entire community.
I agree, but that's what we're trying to accomplish.
I think that's where your judgment has to come in.
My judgment has always been, and will always be.
I know that, and I commend you for it, sir. You're the longest serving member up there.
But the point is,
I voted for you.
But I do believe, just as we look at, we make very difficult decisions in how we remove trash. We make very difficult decisions on how we plow our streets. We make very difficult decisions on how we provide emergency medical technicians and our rescue squad to come out and service the people. And the idea here is to try and balance everything, to save money, to save wherever we can, but still provide services to our residents. If I own a home, and Strathmere is a good place to use as an example, they have very difficult times putting any addition on their homes without needing to appear before a zoning board, or some kind of planning and zoning board, if that's what it comes out to, because of the small lot sizes that they have in Strathmere and the encroachments and side and front yard setbacks, you name it. I served on the zoning board for 5 years before I became a township committee member, and I've been on the planning board for the past, well, up until this year, 15 years. So I understand the issues here. My point is we had a great presentation, put a lot of time into it. And the basis of this whole discussion is if we consolidate, it will save money. But if we can save money and not have to consolidate, then we've won both ways. And that's why I think it's important to look at both scenarios. I have already said, I'm committed to saving money this year. I realize the momentous task that the five members of this committee has this year. But if we can continue to do the trash removal, we continue to do the snow removal, we can continue to do the rescue squad and picking people up, and we can continue to service people that have needs from a zoning and planning standpoint, and we're saving money somehow, then we've done our job. And that's what we need to do. And I don't think I'm asking for any more than just looking at what's being offered. If we haven't talked about it, this is not the proper time to do negotiation. But if somehow we're saving very close or what's been presented, then I don't know that we even have an argument here.
But one thing to consider, Mr. Mayor, you've had a lot of professionals testify that there's no guarantee of any savings whatsoever. That $15,000 figure was a one-sided presentation, and there were people here on the other side that absolutely said to you, you're not going to save that money. There's other ways that this is going to cost the township money. So you guys keep saying that this is a savings, but there's no guarantee. That's one side of the argument. And the other is just as aggressive to the fact that you're not going to save anything. In fact, this may cost you money by doing this. So I think the argument is flawed from its conception, that this wasn't a well-rounded presentation. It was a very singly-minded presentation that may or may not be accurate at all.
Well, they got the,
We're not going to have Ted, we're not now addressing it. We're up here. What? So, we have a first and a second. If you want to take a vote, we take a vote, or if you want to withdraw and give it 2 weeks to see what we can come up with, that's another option.
In 2 weeks, we'll have some kind of response.
Well, we hope to. If we don't, then, we make a consideration the other way. But it's up to you. You can take the vote. I think it's kind of clear that I'm looking to try and negotiate this a little bit if it's possible. I'm not allowed to negotiate. I wish I could, because I think that would be a way to make this township committee go. But I'm not so sure that the suggestion of Dan in looking and cutting some of the budget, towards the thing might be the way to do it as well.
I assume, Tony, I can't sit on any of the budget portion for township committee.
I'm sorry.
Where does it go?
That's
I will not be able to sit on it.
No, you can. You're members of the committee. The statute understands that you have dual roles, so you can do both. Yeah, Yeah, just like when you leave here and you go to the planning board, you're going to know and be able to vote as to what they do with their professionals.
I just wasn't sure it's proper for us to be sitting.
No, you can. That's one of the odd parts where conflict is allowed potentially. That's what some of the commentators that Jules was talking about, how the planning board is closer to and more controlled by the governmental body than the zoning board, where it's more of an independent citizen judicial organization, where they're more independent.
So the motion is either we proceed.
I continue drafting and proceed, or we put it on hold, I guess we withdraw it. I would want a second.
The only reason why I'm hoping to do that is to save some potential money from drafting the ordinance.
That's all it is whether you want me to continue drafting it to have something for you.
Well, at this point, I think in the best interest of all, we'll re-agendize this for our next meeting.
So amending your motion to that? Okay.
So it's just really withdrawing the motion is what we're saying.
Is withdrawing it, but you also, if I understand it, give me directions, hold off until the next meeting, we're going to talk about it again.
Put on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
We gotta advertise and everything to have a meeting.
You can't have a meeting in the timeframe you're talking about regardless, because we have to legally
Advertise and everything else.
Well, then we have a budget meeting on Monday, and we'll be discussing budget for 3 hours, so maybe some decisions can be made through that.
It doesn't mean they're taking action in 2 weeks, it just means you're putting it back on the agenda.
Okay. But, I'll do my best to get a special meeting together, get all the members together, and also get it advertised as required in the newspapers, try to get everybody on board. And all that costs money. Yes, time.
For what purpose?
And the other thing is, I don't want to put it on for the regular meeting due to the water tower application. It's going to be way too long.
Okay, we got that message. So, put on the agenda for the next meeting, what's that date?
February 10th.
February 10th.
Days you need to advertise.
I've got to talk to Shelley, but I think it's 7 business days.
So you should have time.
Right, I'm pretty sure it's 7 business days.
48 hours.
First, you have to make sure that you can have the numbers to have the meeting, you're going to advertise the meeting, and nobody may be able to attend.
Mr. Crossan, I don't think we have your name on record, so,
And
While I'm not the solicitor for either of your boards, it looks like there's at least a quorum of the zoning board here, so I wouldn't talk amongst yourselves about business,
We're not going to discuss anything.
because I don't think you advertise this as a meeting, I would suggest.
Dan, both boards are going to have a meeting then.
I'm sorry, hold it here.
Both boards are going to require having a meeting.
To come up with a formal determination as to whether or not they're going to change their professional contracts, yes.
And we don't have everybody from the planning board here, so we don't know what they're going to do.
Well, I was one person, and the two of you.
Yeah. But maybe you're not the chair.
so we may be able to address it, through the budget, so. Okay.
So you can't vote on this tonight, right?
Well, is there a new motion to agendize it, just agenda?
Motion has been withdrawn.
Motion withdrawn.
You want a motion to agendize it for the next meeting? Is that
Well, no, I just want to make sure that's what we're doing. If that's all we're doing, and I'm being directed not to continue drafting, and then we'll talk about it at the next meeting.
right?
All right.
So we re-agendize it for next meeting.
Exactly, and for those of you that have some interest as to how we may or may not look at planning and zoning with respect to the budget, we'll have a meeting again next Monday, 6 to 9. What do we say, 6:30 to 9? Okay, so
That's the third, correct?
So we're moving forward now, there's no last item on the agenda, go ahead, and then we'll open up for another public portion if anybody else wants to address the township committee on any other matters.
Number 18, Green Team bylaws.
Paul, I think you're just asking the township committee to approve them?
Yeah, we're just asking the committee, since this is really
The green team,
of the township committee acting upon their behalf, the green team's looked over these bylaws and, approved them within their body, but felt it incumbent that, to pass the bylaws over to the township committee to have their blessing.
I looked at them, they're very basic, they are subject to review and approval of the township committee. The green team is not a statutory animal, it's not something that's set up through New Jersey statute, it's not like your zoning board, it's not like your planning board. What it is an organization that is created through the township in order to pursue sustainability initiatives to be available for grants and other type programs through the Sustainability New Jersey. Is that what the nonprofit? It's a nonprofit organization that encourages municipalities. I think there's some 400 out of the 560 that in the state that have created green teams, and they've asked me to basically review and approve their bylaws. You still have control of the board or the team or whatever you want to refer to. Yes. Yeah, they have no professionals, to my understanding.
All right, so you want a motion for us to approve these?
Yes. I have no problem with them, they're fine.
Motion approved.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera? Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, so at this time, I will now reopen, have to do the reports.
Someone needs to make that motion.
Someone like to make a motion to pay the bills?
So moved.
You have to read.
Claims submitted for payment at this meeting be approved and then incorporated in full in the minutes of this meeting.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Palumbo?
Yes. There are 4 reports from municipal departments, municipal court, Department of Public Works, MUA, and Green Team. Those reports will be available tomorrow morning at the request of the township clerk's office, but I'll make a motion to accept those reports. Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Insera?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, so again, at this time, we'll open up, is there anyone that would like to address the township committee on any other issue that you'd like to address us for? Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. President. Between the township committee and the school board, the budgets are going to come to like $47 million this year. Tonight was the school board's meeting on their budget too. I mean, we've asked in the past, it's like the meetings get scheduled the same night. Like the public, even if nobody shows up, ought to have the opportunity to go to the budget meeting.
And we did schedule a special meeting for ourselves next Monday.
Yes, I realize it, but I mean, is there no way to coordinate with the school board?
Well, they did change the one time. Why on that it said schedule, I have no idea. I asked them to change made that, and then they go back to where we were before, and why I don't know. I'm going to use it on to them, I'll try to see if they can do something.
Anyone else? Now's the time to do it. Okay, hearing silence, I'll close the public portion and entertain a motion to go into closed session. Mr. Collins, who would read that document first.
I hereby move that a resolution be incorporated in the minutes authorizing the township committee to enter into executive session for the following matters pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. Matters: personnel, litigation for township versus Sandstone, contract negotiation.
I'm see that in the records. Can you change that off my time? We paid him 15 grand, bonus. They're not asking for another food.
Exposed to the public as follows. It is anticipated that the matters discussed in closed session may be disclosed to the public upon the determination of the township committee that the public interest will no longer be served by such confidentiality. With respect to employment and personnel matters, such discussion will be made public if and when formal action is taken or when individuals involved consent to be made public. With respect to contract negotiations, such matters will be made public when negotiations have ceased and there is no longer a reason for confidentiality.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins? Yes. Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank the three of you that still remain here for attending. We hope that we get out in reasonable time from our closed session.